Thomas. I am the vice chair of the BOA. Mr. Ballantyne could not be here today. I think he's fishing. Anyway, so we look forward to going ahead, and Ms. Lambert will call roll.
Mr. Ballantyne from Mandeville. Mrs. Thomas from Mandeville.
Present.
Mr. Daly from Covington.
Present.
Mr. Blosh from Mandeville.
Here.
Mr. Spees from Lacombe.
Here.
And Mr. Swindell from Covington.
Here.
Mrs. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
We also have to appoint Dewey Spees because it hasn't been formally appointed.
And where would that come? Okay, let me make a couple of announcements, please. Please silence all of your phones and your devices, any whistles you have. We just need those to be silenced, please. If we make a decision in the board this afternoon and you disagree with that, you have the right to appeal our decision to the 22nd District Judge Court. There are speaker cards located on each side, so if you have something that you wanted to say, please fill the card out and we'll get that. Public speaking, there'll be 10 minutes for each side and a 5-minute rebuttal. And then we would ask, after your case has been decided, if you would please leave, unless you just want to stay and be quiet, because what we find is there's a lot of chatter, and so sometimes we can't hear. All right, we have one bit of information. I believe Mr. Spees needs to be approved as a voting member of the Board of Adjustments. All
Mr.
right.
Spees and Mr. Swindell will both be sitting as voting members today.
All right. So do we vote on that?
No.
All right. So, Mr. Spees, congratulations and welcome to the board full-time as a voter. All righty. So we're going to move on with our first case. It's BOA case number.
We have to vote on the approval of the minutes.
Oh, thank you. Never mind. We are now going to approve the April 5th, 2022 minutes. Was the board able to read the minutes? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded that we accept the April 5th board meeting. Please vote.
All in favor.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to our cases. We do have quite a few today. BOA case number 2022-2768. The request by the applicant in an A4 single-family residential zoning district for an after-the-fact variance to reduce rear yard setback from 10 feet to 6 feet and required side yard from 15 feet to 4 feet. This property is located in 1337 Destin Street, Mandeville, Louisiana. And who is here to speak to this? Would you please state your name and address?
I'll present the case first.
Let us go ahead and get staff minutes or staff comments.
The objective of the request is to allow for the completion of an accessory building, a covered outdoor kitchen as shown on the attached drawing. This case was on the agenda last month, and as stated in the attached narrative, the partially completed structure sits on top of a gas line. The owners agreed to relocate the gas line, and they also submitted a letter from the gas company indicating a cost estimate to complete the construction. Note that the variance to reduce the rear yard setback is no longer being requested since the plans have been adjusted to meet the minimum requirements. So what's in front of you today is the request, the waiver or the reduction of the side yard setback, which is from 15 feet to 4 feet. And while an attempt is being made to meet the rear yard setback requirements, there's still no compelling reason to be in favor of the requested variance since it is only to reduce the side yard setback at this time. And should the board be in favor of the request, it should be subject to the following, which would be to submit a letter of evidence that the gas line has been relocated.
Okay, now state your name and address, please.
Jenny Meavers, 1337 Destin Street, Mandeville.
All righty. What else would you like for us to know about this?
So when I was here last time, got more letters from my neighbors and approved that they're okay with everything. I spoke with Atmos. They gave us the estimate. I sent them a check yesterday. It went out late. It probably is in the mail today. But it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get on their schedule, and then it will take 1 to 2 days for them to move the gas line after that. And then the only other thing that is still really needing is the side yard variance.
Okay. Is there anyone here that is opposed to this? All right, then do I have any questions from the board?
Okay, good. Madam Speaker, I just made some observations and just some findings as I was reviewing the case this past evening. And a couple of things that come to mind. We started off with, I guess, the beginning point of where the problems began or started was that we did not have a permit to initially start or begin work. As a result of not having the permit, our problems began to escalate to the point where we built over a gas servitude of record. As we mentioned earlier, there doesn't seem to be any kind of compelling hardship aside from a monetary hardship, which is, as you know, we cannot consider as a reason for granting a variance or an after-the-fact variance. I will remind the board that in the past we've had 2 similar cases like this since I've been here within the past year, one of which is where a slab was built and poured to the property line and we required the property owner to tear it down. There was another one just recently, within the past few weeks, where we had a similar property line that was for a driveway, and we actually required the contractor to remove that at his expense, or I guess it was removed at whoever's expense. But the point being is it was asked to be removed. I know I did read the letter from you, madam, that talked about you speaking to someone at the, I guess, the planning department. You didn't state who that was, but that staff member apparently said that they thought everything would be okay. I don't agree with that assessment of the issue. My own opinion of this is that the reason we have so many of these after-the-fact variance requests is that we continually let these slide and go. And at some point in time, especially in this sort of situation where we're built over a gas line. These are the reasons why we have the processes that we have, the building permit, the inspections, that sort of thing. My own opinion of this is that I would not be in favor of granting this variance. That's just
There's a building permit, but it was after the fact, you're right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's all I have, madam.
Thank you. Mr. Daly?
I was just going to ask about the rear setback. Is that because the roof was brought in, or why
The wall was,
the wall was brought in?
yeah, so the wall will be moved 4 feet after we have the, there has to be an engineered beam that has to go in for that.
And that's on the
Same side that is
The
sitting
rear
on the
yard.
gas line.
oh, that's the same side as the gas line. I'm sorry. You said, so it says rear, but it seems like that's the side. But I guess that's because the
It's-
site is oriented
Yeah, to the, because I'm on the
90
corner.
degrees. Got it. Okay. Okay. So the side with the gas line is going to be pulled in.
So what they are planning on doing is going to the street, the corner of the street, and then teeing it, and then it will bypass all the way down to my neighbors, which is about 135 feet, and then it will then tee back and then connect into the gas line. They will cap off at before the slab on my side of the property. So it would be capped off on my side of the property to the back side of the property, the rear.
Okay, are there any other comments? Yes, sir.
I see a letter here from the property owner at 1337 Destin. Am I just missing it? Is there one, do you have one from the house that's behind you on Belle Maison?
Yeah.
Okay.
Michelle and Bradbury.
It may be I'm just missing it in my pack of paperwork here.
Yeah, there should be, and I got two
There's
other
two.
ones
Yeah, I
late
think-
last night, so I haven't submitted those.
But did you submit new letters as well? I know you emailed me.
Yeah, I emailed you the
Yeah.
letters.
And I emailed them
Yeah.
to y'all, okay?
Right.
But do you have any additional letters?
I do.
here today? Okay. So this is just new letters that are being submitted today from all the other abutting property owners.
Okay. All right, are there any other comments? No one in the audience wants to say anything? Okay, thank you.
So those are actually, I don't know why they signed separately from each other, but it's a husband and wife, and then they've also purchased the house next to them. So it's for two separate addresses, but it's 4 pieces of paper.
All right, with there being no further discussion, do I hear a motion?
Improvements from last time she was here, and I'll go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and approve it. Just my thoughts on it.
And I would like to remind the board, too, that you can approve with stipulations and conditions. If you want to condition the approval on the moving of the gas line, that is something that this board has the power to do.
Is your motion in, as you can see on the staff report, is your motion according to the,
The final inspection and,
okay.
yeah.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve with the stipulation that, that the gas line is moved prior to the final inspection and that the building can be granted. All right, all those in favor, please, or all those please vote with your voting machine.
We have 3 yeas and 2 nays, so motion failed.
All right, the motion failed.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to BO Case 2022-2779. Request that the applicant in an A2 suburban zoning district to reduce the required no-cut buffer on the east side of the property from 50 to 20 feet and to reduce the required no-cut buffer on the west side from 50 to 30 for approximately 800 feet. Property is located at 23234 Low Davis Road, Covington. Applicant and representative, James and Jamie Taylor.
This request was in front of you last month and also a few months ago. Here, the owner is requesting to reduce the buffer on one side, on both sides, actually, and he requested to postpone his request last month, and as you can see, I attached to your packet a letter of no objection from the abutting property owner.
All right, would you please state your name and address?
James Taylor, 24004 Low Davis Road, Covington.
All right, sir. What would you like to say about this request, please?
The only thing is when we submitted the application, we are only trying to clear 200 feet, not the 800 feet it shows. I don't know how that kind of got lost, but it's only a 200 feet for the 20 on the east side and the 30 on the west side. On the first application, I was asking for the 800. We did kind of work with the architect to kind of make some things, to make it fit in that area. We would go back to the 50 for the remaining 800, the 600 that we're going to clear of the 15 acres. Now, when I was here the first time, I didn't realize, what the ordinance is, if you have 50 feet on each side of my property, one side is 2,600 feet, one side is 2,000 feet, only being 288 feet wide, you would tell me over a third of my property is unusable. So that's 5.3 acres of unused land if I can't touch any of the 50. For now, we're just trying to get the house settled and built just in the 1 acre of property that we plan to clear. We did have the only neighbor that I have, Mr. Brian Brewster. He did approve the 30 feet with no problem. You should have that letter. So we're just asking for the 20 feet on the east side for 200 feet and 30 feet to the west side for 200 feet. Just to put the building and the house in there.
However, your driveway is still gonna be 20 feet from the property line?
Yeah, that's existing. That was an existing driveway from, I don't know when. It's already been there.
Oh, so your driveway is already,
They've cleared the trees. It's not a, permanent driveway, but it has a path going back to where it had a previous house on it that was torn down. So that was I guess the path that the original owner took.
okay, thanks for the clarification.
All right, is there anyone that objects to this request? If not, do I have any conversation from the board? Any questions?
I'd like to just kind of address the idea that it's unusable property. The property is certainly usable. Now, there are buildable areas that are set up when we went through this zoning process. That's what the Planning and Zoning Commission had envisioned. That's what the actual council voted on to approve, was to have that separation, that 50-foot buffer between properties, that to increase the tree line and privacy. So I would suggest a couple of things. The house, could be turned sideways. That's an option. Maybe not for you, but that is an option. Number two, what you're asking for is a larger house than what was allotted for or designed when the zoning law was put together. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the other option is a smaller house. Now, in the past, we have granted these side yard setbacks, encroachments for side yard or side of the house loading for garages. Mm-hmm. I am happily pleased to find out that you're not asking for the total 800 feet. That makes it a little bit better for me. But I will say in the past, we have denied these going all the way back. So I'm kind of leaning to allowing this, but this is the idea that it was supposed to have that buffer for privacy for you neighbors and for you neighbors to come.
And I would never clear to the property.
Yeah, and you have to understand, when people buy property, they buy it with an assumption that, well, this is the way it's zoned, this is the way I intend for it to remain. And maybe your neighbor next door has bought it with the intention that he's going to have 50-foot buffers. I don't know, but nonetheless, okay. Those are my comments, Madam Chairman.
Are there any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I've got a question.
All right, yes, sir.
Any attempt, there is another adjacent lot. I think we asked this the last time. Any attempt to contact, the property owner there?
It hasn't even been recorded. You can't even go to the clerk of courts. It has no owner on the property. I've looked on Land Glide, I've looked on several applications. I've actually tried to purchase it, and my real estate agent can't find an owner for that property. It was once 100 acres chopped up per kid. That's why they're all 14 acres and some change in the odd sizes. I tried to purchase it, and my agent couldn't find, even going to the clerk of court, find the owner to contact them.
Okay.
So.
All right. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. A motion to approve the variance as requested.
It's been moved to accept it. Is there a second?
Motion with all the changes that are in here, so that would be in the motion.
Are you referring to changing the 200 feet from 800 feet to 200 feet, or what are you referring to,
To
Mr.
going
Pease?
from 50 feet to 20 feet,
Okay,
and 30 feet on the other side.
all right. Okay, has that been amended?
So the request is now just to clear up to 30 feet on one side, 20 feet on the other side, but just as shown on your drawing?
Yes.
You know, just that approximately 1 acre.
Yes.
All right. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Please vote with your machine.
Four yeas and 1 nay, motion passed.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to BOA case 2022-2505. Request by applicant in the PF2 Public Facilities Zoning District for a variance to remove all pine trees within the required 50-foot no-cut barriers. Property is located at 39524 Honey Island Swamp Road, Pearl River. Applicant is Mr. Russell Jones. Yes, sir, will you please step forward while the staff reads their
Sorry to keep you waiting, I just amended the numbers.
Okay.
While the request is only to remove the existing pine trees within a 50-foot no-cut buffer, there is no compelling reason to be in favor of the request. Considering the size, width, and depth of the property, the preservation of the pine trees within the buffers will not prevent the development of the property.
All right, sir, would you state your name and your address?
Russell Jones, 65370 Highway 41, Pearl River, Louisiana.
All right, sir. What would you like to say about this?
I'm just trying to get permission to cut my trees.
All right. What happens if we don't remove these trees in that 50-foot?
What happens?
Yeah, does it affect the way why is it a necessity for you to have those trees removed?
I'm trying to harvest my timber.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone in the room that has an opposing view? All right. Are there any questions from the board, please? Mr. Bosch?
I just have one question for staff. So with this zoning classification, the PF-2, Public Facilities Zone District, does that allow for the growth of pine trees and harvesting? I hate to put you on the spot
It
about
allows
that.
for the property to remain fully wooded. However, if he comes and apply for a land clearing, he's still subject to meeting the buffers.
Okay, so it would still require the buffers?
That's correct.
I understand. Okay.
Mr. Blosh asked if the buffer requirements still apply to that particular zoning.
Still applies.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
All right, is there any discussion? Mr. Daly?
Were you finished? No. Okay. So it's an L-shaped lot. So the issue with the buffer is buffering, it's sort of, I hate to hold this up, but, the lot to the north. Is that northeast? I hope it's northeast. But what are the adjacent lots and what are they used for?
One side belongs to my brother, and the other side belongs to a friend of mine that lives back there. And the one side of the property, I think when you're talking about, it's on the, I guess it would be the northeast side. I have no idea who owns that piece.
All right, Mr. Spees?
What is the size of the property?
I think it's about 15 acres.
15 acres?
Yes, sir. Well, I actually have more than that, but that's 15 acres that I'm cutting.
I see.
Yeah, I think it's total like 40 acres, minus the road that's going through it.
All right. Mr. Daly?
Planted?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, they were
Okay.
planted.
Yeah.
Did you, can I?
And I
one more-
intend on planting it back also, so I've already cut one side, to 25, and I've planted 9,000 pines back on it. That's what I do for a living. I'm a logger. I'm in the logging business. I harvest timber. And when it's mature, ready to be cut, I'm ready to cut my timber,
Right.
I got one more question after you.
No, I'm finished, thank you.
Go ahead.
Who's your neighbor on the one side over there?
AC Dillard is a neighbor. He don't live back there. He's just got property back there.
Okay,
It's back in the swamp.
okay.
My property is back in the swamp, Honey Island Swamp. My brother's Donald Jones. He owns property on the southeast side.
Well, you got a storage facility over there. What is that?
What's that now?
Looks like a storage facility.
No, there's no storage facility. He's got some property cleared right beside mine.
Okay. So it's all woods then?
Yeah, once, the backside of it's cleared. I mean, it's pasture land.
Okay,
That's on the backside. And if you're facing it, on the south side, southeast side, that's cleared also. The side over on the north side is wooded.
well, the purpose is a buffer zone is to have your neighbors have some privacy and not have to look at what y'all do all the time. But you don't have many neighbors then?
That's
what you're
right.
saying. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to. But go ahead.
Yes.
Can you tell me, how long have you owned this property, for one? And then
How-
number two, was it zoned at some point in time? I'm trying to get to the point whether or not this was an allowable use at one time and we changed it through a zoning change. If you
I've
can
had it
answer
about
that.
8 years.
8 years, okay.
Yes.
So when you bought the property, it was already zoned this way? Is that what we're saying?
I have no idea. I didn't check the zoning before I bought the property.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know many people that do check the zonings before they buy land.
it's a good idea.
Well, I see that now, but
Okay.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd
Yes,
like
Ms.
to know more
Blush.
about the surrounding properties too, because I see this somewhat as well, I like to maintain the tree canopy, but I also understand the need for harvesting as well of pines. What is the property around, and I'm talking about, you said it's swamp. Can you describe what you think, or what you would describe as real swamp? Does it have
Well,
highlands, or just
I mean,
unbuildable property? What is it around it?
no, I've got a camp back there. I mean, you could build back there, It's
Okay.
it's just in the Honey Island Swamp. They call it swamp.
Right, I understand.
It's not wetlands or not, it's just land.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Are there any motions? I'm sorry.
Do we have an attorney? Oh,
Yes.
good, good.
Do you have a question?
Would we be violating anything by going against the zoning law? If it's indeed,
it-
if we let him cut things that he's not supposed to be doing because of
He's-
zoning law?
He's going to be required to meet all of the zoning requirements. And if this is a permitted use, then the administration, the Department of Planning, can issue a clearing permit. This is just to keep those 50-foot buffers in place. That's the variance that you all are considering today, is if he can cut into those 50-foot no-cut buffers. But otherwise, he's going to have to meet all the other administrative permit requirements that still exist under the zoning law.
Okay.
All right.
I think our struggle is normally we're dealing with residences and buffering residences, and this is actually a timber lot and a public facility zoning.
And you stated that you were going to replant.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
However, Isn't your request to cut only the pine trees within the 50?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with leaving the hardwood trees in the buffers, because I'm not gonna harvest them. They not mature enough to harvest anyways right now,
Okay.
But if they were mature enough, I would ask, because that's what we do. We in the logging business, we harvest the timber. We sell timber, for y'all to have toilet paper.
Well, we appreciate that.
I mean, I came from work today. That's why I look like I am. I come straight from work, and when I get done with this, I'm going back to work. I have to work 6 to 7 days a week to keep things going. It's not easy for us loggers out there. We struggle. Gas prices, they don't pay us no more money. So
I know, I've seen.
I get a chance to sell some of my trees, and it's time to harvest them. I'm ready to get rid of them. I need to make some money.
And we need more toilet paper, so.
Well, I plan on doing it.
Okay, do I have a motion, please?
Madam Chairman, in case BOA 2022-2805, I'd like to offer motion to grant the variance of only pine trees being harvested from the property within the no-cut the buffer, the 50-foot buffer.
All right, it's been moved that we approve this with the understanding that it'll only be pine trees that'll be cut. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. May I have a vote on the machine, please?
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. Just wanted to confirm.
Hey, can I make a statement, please?
you may.
I have to cut some of the small hardwood, the brush to get in there to get to the trees. Well, I'll leave every one that I possibly can leave. I mean, you can't leave every tree when you go in there to cut these, because, they might have a dang tree right beside the pine that you got to cut, and I got tree cutters that go in there and cut them. And if it's in the way, it's got to go. You understand? Sir?
Ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to be straight up honest, the way the operation works.
We appreciate that.
I'll go out of my way to leave them, That's what I plan on doing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would like to say, when he comes in for his permit, we'll work with him on what the rules and regulations are.
Okay.
And make sure, he adheres to them.
all right.
I mean, I can't sit here and tell you that I can leave every one of them because it's impossible for me to do that,
So, Mr. Weiner, if that's the case, would you be to the point where he comes in and you're looking at the permit and you're looking at everything he's done, would you require replanting of smaller trees or the trees that were hard?
Yeah, well, it
hardwood
depends
trees,
on
shrubs?
percentages of how many he's removing, the size of them, and what their grade
Okay.
is.
Yeah, I guess
So-
my question is, that can be done administratively?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, so we have a motion on the floor, so we do need to vote, please.
Motion carries.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome. And thanks for your service to the community. All right, moving on. Going to move on to BO case number 2022-2814. Request by applicant in an A4 single-family residential zoning district for a variance to reduce the required street side backyard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet to allow for the construction of a single-family resident. Property is located on the corner of an unconstructed portion of Prevail Street and Coors Carson in Mandeville. And the applicant and representative is Nancy Landers, and we will have staff comments, please.
The objective of the request is to allow for the construction of a single-family residence having a street side yard setback of 10 feet. While the side street is not currently constructed, the requested variance is a personal preference rather than a hardship. The property is slightly over 100 foot wide, providing sufficient space to meet the required street side setback.
All right. Who is here to represent this case? Please state your name and your address.
Nancy Landers, and it's 1643 Calhoun.
All right.
It is not a true corner. There's a driveway, and there's, I don't know, maybe 30 feet, then the 10 feet would start. It's not a public road on the side of the property. And I'm having to apply for a revocation, and that only goes 90 feet. If I have to push the house over, the 20, I'm trying to get into the driveway, the lot's 104, and that's the side that my garage will be. It's a side load.
All right. Is there anyone here that is opposed to this request for variance? All right. Okay. Any questions from the board, Mr. Blanche?
Yes, I'd like to ask you about the revocation you mentioned just a moment ago. Can you explain that better? Because I'm looking at the
There's
drawings
no
and I don't...
street cut through.
Okay.
I'm having to do the ratification to get to the driveway, which is on the far side.
Okay. Steph, can you bring us up to speed on that?
So there is a request for a street revocation on the Course Carson Street side. So basically, she will be purchasing a portion of the Parish right-of-way, not on the Preval side, but on Course Carson Street side, to be able to access her property, which will be added to actually the property, and be able to construct her driveway. However, the other side, Preval, is an unopened Parish right-of-way. At this time, it's not constructed.
Where is this? Okay. All right.
Did you want to submit the pictures, ma'am?
I have the pictures, and I also have the owner of the road that goes back
All right.
on the side of this property. Sure. Well, if you need all of them.
Is it the same thing?
Uh-huh.
Would you like to come up and address the board? Certainly. Oh, this is pretty rural, isn't it?
My name is Londi Moore. I'm at 1900 Old Mandeville Lane, Mandeville. The Preval unconstructed, dedicated right-of-way, portion of it has already been taken by a development that is happening behind Coors Carson. They've cleared it. In fact, they've backed into my land and cleared. So Preval, in the maps that were for that subdivision, showed that Preval was supposed to, in their negotiations, come towards my property, and they were taking part of that. Somehow I didn't get notified, and I know things happen, but Preval's already been taken up by that subdivision that is coming in. So it only leaves my section, or half of my land that is adjacent to Preval that could be developed, and it cannot connect into the subdivision by the way the subdivision was the roads. I think it may be an extension of Woodlands. I believe those are the developers that were involved. So what she is doing is that within her 104 feet, she is asking for a 10-foot side setback on the portion of Preval that I would have half of and she would have half of, because it can't go anywhere except into my property. Well, it cannot get into that subdivision, and that's what would happen. So does that make sense when you look at the area around it? Mm-hmm. It's already been approved as a subdivision back there, and they've already absorbed Preval.
Okay.
Preval is your driveway.
Preval is my driveway, and it has been for 20-something years.
Okay. All right. Mr. Swindell?
So I'm looking at the code here, and the code calls for 10 feet on each side of a regular lot, not thinking about a corner lot, but the drawing that's submitted shows that the carport is planning on going even inside that 10-foot.
Well, I was
No.
told that you needed 5 feet for an open carport. If I need to make it smaller, But again, my
If
problem
you
is.
could speak to the mic, please, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. My problem is, if I pushed it over, the ratification's 90 feet. If I push the house over, I'm going to be trying to turn into my house and not the driveway.
Just for clarification, the carport that she has, it's attached by a breezeway, but the breezeway is less than 10 foot wide, so it's not considered as being attached. And due to the size and the zoning, she's actually allowed to be 5 feet from the side property line.
Okay.
So basically, the request is only on the pre-vault
On the
side.
pre-vol side, okay.
The pictures that I submitted, the yellow sign, the property goes over several feet past that. And so there's plenty room against the street going down her her driveway.
Okay. All right, Mr. Swindell, any other comments?
No, I mean, this is for the staff mainly. I mean, the property owner talks about the street as if it's never going to be developed as a street. I don't know if that's, I mean, what should we be considering here? You know,
Yeah,
should
I'm
this board be considering that could at some point be developed as a street and?
No, because it can't go. Her driveway and on the side.
Oh, I understand what you're
it's
saying.
narrows.
I mean, that question was really for the staff. I mean,
I mean, Mrs. Moore, you own.
It's Kingswood subdivision, which y'all have approved, and they are putting houses on that side that what was Proval is going to be part of their backyard. Kingswood subdivision.
Okay. All right, Mr. Daly?
Sorry for jumping in earlier without being recognized. So access to Kingswood is through Coors Carson Street then?
It's through Coors Carson, and then they make a rectangle block that comes back out, rectangle road that comes back out to Coors Carson. There's only one entrance in and out of that subdivision. And the properties that border our neighbors, which include her on her side, they have made backyards. In other words, they're putting houses on each side of the street that they're running. The street is interior, not along a boundary.
My question to you is, the driveway that is shown here, it does not, you purchased that portion of the road? I was not aware that that portion had been purchased.
It's not purchased. It was granted when we did Old Mandeville Woods, which I was a developer for. When we did that, we had 6 more acres behind there, and we got approval to be able to use Proval as part of our driveway back into there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This was between 2001 and 2003. It was worked out with the city of Mandeville.
Yes, sir.
A potential solution or motion could be to make the variance contingent on the revocation being approved. That's one way of doing it. If the revocation is approved and assimilated to her property, she may not even need a variance at that point.
Well, the revocation is not on the same side.
It's not, it's on the pre-vol
No,
side.
Yeah, it's on the pre-vault side.
Gotcha. But still, you can make the motion based on approval of the revocation, if that's what y'all need to do, or staff review of the previous revocation being, you know, just staff research. I don't know, any thoughts, Emily?
All right. Mr. Spees?
Are there any questions, anybody against it?
No.
Okay. I'll make the motion that we accept it, subject to the revocations being approved. That's what you said.
All right. It's been moved to approve with the revocation approval. Do I hear a second? I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor and/or opposed, please vote.
Mr. Blosh, you second?
Yes, he did.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to BOA case 2022-10 2817, request by applicant in an HC2 Highway Commercial Zoning District for a waiver of the required street planning buffer to provide additional parking spots. Property is located on 240 Highway 22 East Madisonville, and the applicant is Impostado Sellers. And do we have someone here representing Impostado?
Do you want to hear the staff comments?
Yeah, I get, what do we, is there anybody against this that's here? Are you?
Not against, but I have helped Mika Impostado with this property before. If it's okay with the commission, I'll give her a call.
You want
could
to just
roll back
table
a
it?
few I mean, just take a shot, because something's going on, obviously. I was not aware of this. I'm not involved in this, but I just thought it might be a nice thing to do.
We'll just table it until you get back with us and
Yeah,
let us
you
know.
can proceed, obviously. with-
All right. So we will table that and move on to BOA 2022-2818. Request by an applicant in an HC3 Highway Commercial Zoning District for a waiver of the required 10-foot side yard buffers and required number of Class A and Class B trees to allow for an additional, for an additional parking lot. Property is located on 1290 North Highway 190 Covington. Applicant is Raising Canes, and is Ms. Foster here? Or Mr. Foster? All right, the staff will read their comments.
The objective of the requested waivers is to allow for the construction of the parking lot and drive-through as shown on the attached plan, and for the two parcels to remain under separate ownership. The required number of Class A and Class B trees are proposed to be planted within the parking islands and street side and rear buffers, and also to pay into the tree bank for the balance of the required number of trees that cannot be provided on the site. There is no objection to the request, considering that the two parcels are functioning as one commercial development.
All right. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Mitchell Mayard, 11700 Katy Freeway. We're actually civil engineers representing Ms. Foster today.
All right. Do you have anything further to add to the?
We have previously been approved to add a second driveway on the north side in order to provide on-site stacking to increase the functionality of the lot. We know that area gets really busy, so we're doing everything we can to stack on-site, provide additional parking. So this variance is really just to reduce or take away those side yard setbacks, since this is functioning as an entire property as one. That's really all we have.
All right. Is anyone opposed to this particular variance? All right. Are there any comments from the staff? Mr. Blosh?
Yeah, I'm all for this, and you know, in the previous case, you know, this presented a serious, you know, traffic issue. There have been a lot of accidents out that way, deaths. In fact, I can recall one death there, in fact. So I'm happy about it. I notice that y'all have agreed to, or maybe you have not, but to go ahead and put into the bank, the planning bank.
That's correct.
And so you're in agreement with that.
Yes.
So whatever deficiencies are occurring there, that's how you'll get.
Correct.
Okay, I have no issue with it at all.
We had heard this case prior, and I think we're predicated on some of this. So,
Right, okay.
yeah. All right. Is there any further discussion? Do I hear a motion? Oh, Mr. Daly, I'm sorry.
I was just going to clarify that we did hear this, and this is just sort of a revision and cleaning
Right.
up the tree issue.
That's correct.
All right.
All right, great.
All righty. So do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Mr. Swindell.
Motion to approve the variance as requested.
Do I hear a second? Mr. Daly will second. All right, would you please vote with your machines?
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We like your chicken. All right. All righty, now we will hear BO case 2022-2819, request by applicant in an A3 suburban zoning district for an after-the-fact request to reduce the required 50-foot no-cut buffer to 5 feet on the west side of the property and replant with new vegetative buffer. Property is located at 515 and 519 Brewster Road, Madisonville. Applicant Lee Robinson and John Martinez. Are you here? Staff will read their comments.
Parcel A1 and A2 applied for a land clearing permit in October of 2021, and the land clearing permit was issued. Upon clearing their land, the required 50-foot buffers along the interior property lines between A1 and A2 and the adjacent property to the west, some of the buffers were cleared. The applicant has applied for a after-the-fact land clearing request to fix the issue of the partial buffer being cleared by requesting to plant a vegetative buffer approximately 5 foot of bamboo along the western property line between parcel A2 and the adjacent neighbor. The planning department would like to call out the fact that there is a 200-foot power line right-of-way on parcel B, which is along the eastern side, which precludes them from utilizing the property. And the reason for the 5-foot buffer would be to construct a single driveway off of Brewster Road. I would also like to note that a 50-foot buffer is required along all sides and rear property line, but not along the flag portion of that lot. So that would be their driveway, and no buffer would be required. They're trying to fix the issue with planting of bamboo along the western property line of A2.
All right. Do you have anything further?
Good. So, I guess it was inadvertently removed when we were building the flagpole driveway. My lot is the flagpole lot, so it's in the rear of that. It's parcel A2. And so in order to get back there and to do it with the machinery, he inadvertently removed it, but I guess that's it.
My only thing is, we've been coming to the board and dealing with plan development throughout this whole process. We purchased the land back in 2020. And first thing off the bat, we came to the parish and we spoke with them because we wanted to do the right thing. We wanted to make sure that we were not breaking any rules and proceed for that. We also contacted other neighbors and provided them with our phone number in case there was any kind of issues pertaining to stuff that we had never received any kind of calls in reference to us doing anything wrong. The only time we ever found out anything in reference to this buffer is when I believe it was code enforcement, correct? Mm-hmm. Code enforcement came to us, and then we contacted the board in turn. This is where we're at right now.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak against this variance?
Yes, we are.
All right. Would you please step forward and state your name and your address?
Thank you, Board. My name is John Forrester, 6601 Florida Lee, New Orleans, Louisiana. I was retained on behalf of Mr. Ellis. We've submitted a position paper in opposition yesterday and a supplement today, which attached the photographs and tells the full story of this issue that my client was so concerned that he had to hire an attorney to come speak with you. Our paper lines out not only what's before this board, but also the history of what my client, Mr. James Ellis, has been dealing with since past November of last year. And so I want to provide, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to look through the position paper that we provided yesterday. As a housekeeping matter, we had requested, because I was brought on so late in the process just a few days ago, to have a continuance granted. I understand that needs to be requested here. So I am requesting and have requested in my paper a continuance because there's a number of outstanding issues that I'll go through that we ask be resolved before this board votes on this issue. We've issued a cease and desist letter to the neighboring property owners who requested this after the fact variance, and will be seeking a hold or revocation of the permit just until this can get resolved. And so first, I'd ask, I don't know if I'm allowed to request a motion now on the requested continuance. I'm happy to go through my position for the board to decide as they see fit. So with anything, I'll go forward unless I hear something.
Staff comment?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I jumped.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that the board can consider a motion postpone if you all want to. That's your discretion.
I would like to hear more about what you're speaking about before we make any type decision regarding that.
Certainly, I'll continue. So, just as a primary statement, we do not want to go to litigation. That's one reason why we're asking a continuance. Hopefully, there can be a resolution that satisfies all parties involved. But we are prepared to do so if we have to, because it's significant. So, the main issue here we're here to talk about is over an acre of trees that were cut down knowingly. Or at least that is what my client tells me, and so I've stated that in good faith, and Mr. Ellis can provide some testimony on that, as well as a misrepresentation, which is significant to this very issue that was put forward in this zoning variance by the party seeking the variance. So I want to go into the fact that this is not just a one-off item that occurred. There was the two cuts of the oak trees. We've provided pictures that show that now what my client, Mr. Ellis, enjoyed as a complete blocked view is now open, and he gets to stare at concrete trucks beeping day in and day out. My client tried to stop that from occurring, tried to ask, look, can there be some reasonable working hours here that the party's going to agree to? My understanding is that of the multiple vehicles and the beeping and the loud noises that are occurring on weekends, and we've attached a video, two videos actually, of those where my client is having to stare at construction vehicles day in, day out, and having to deal with these beeping without any buffer zone right in their property line. Fires. When the land was originally cleared, the parties asking for this variance knew that buffer zone was not to be cleared. Mr. Ellis informed them. They did it anyway. Then they started burning fires, which violates St. Tammany Code of Ordinances, Section 26-3. My client was forced to call the fire department over and over again. When the fire departments came, the fires would be put out. As soon as they left, the fires would start again. This happened over and over again. I've discussed the loud noises. They violate St. Tammany Code Ordinance Section 14-035. There's been no attempt to try to resolve those issues or limit the work to normal business hours. Oak trees. I've submitted at least 4 pictures of this over acre of cleared land that was done knowingly, where you've got oak trees that have been removed as well. And to quote Section 130-2447, all live oak trees illegally removed shall be replaced with an equal number of inches of live oaks at a minimum of 3.5 inches caliber each on the site, period. That's mandatory, ladies and gentlemen, and that has not been done. My client is asking for that to be done in addition to the replanting of the 50-foot sections over an acre of trees that what he once enjoyed as a privacy screen is gone. A few feet of bamboo is not going to do this. And that gets me, on top of all this and the tree clearing, that's a misdemeanor, by the way, the tree clearing issue. And we're not asking for that. We're just trying to get to a resolution, but it's a serious issue. It's a pattern of actions which should not be rewarded. On top of that, the misrepresentation that I mentioned earlier was that there was an agreement by Mr. Ellis to a few feet of bamboo. And he can come up here and tell you, if you have a question, to confirm that there was no agreement. In fact, there was complaint after complaint, and then a knowing violation and no agreement. And so this is not just one issue before you. It's significant, and there shouldn't be a rewarding of behavior that's illegal, illicit. And so we ask, in addition to that this be denied, or at the minimum continued. The same parties asking for this variance appeared before you on November 9th of 2021 and requested a pond to be built in the middle of these 2 lots. I was not retained at the time, but there was a requirement, and I've got the quotes here, where they were required to provide a couple plans before this board. Mr. Robinson says, Mr. Blanche, says, you agree to provide the maintenance agreement. Mr. Robinson responds, agree to provide the maintenance agreement. Mr. Buchter, will the pond improve the drainage? Drainage plan will be provided. Now, I don't know, maybe they have provided it since November. I haven't seen it, and so I would ask that at a minimum, in asking for this continuance or before resolution of this issue, that proof of compliance is provided. But that's only one item. That's just one thing. We need to see that at least they've done that. That doesn't give them forgiveness for the knowing violation of the cutting of trees, which my client asked to be put back. It's very significant. I don't want to just briefly address the 5 points that you, as board members, are to look at when considering this variance. Point number 1, the variance should not be granted because the granting of this would be a self-imposed request. The neighbors have provided no explanation as to why they demolished the 50-foot of trees, why a few feet of bamboo is going to replace a beautiful 50-foot of trees to enjoy the privacy. There's no utility or benefit to the city or St. Tammany Parish in general. My guess is it's likely this is their preference because it's cheaper than replacing the beautiful trees that were destroyed. That's point number 1, which would warrant a denial. Point number 2, this variance should not be granted because I can think, Mr. Blanche, you referenced earlier in the hearing today that it appears the only issue in denying the variance would be that it costs some money and it would be a financial hardship. And that appears to be the only issue here, to ask for a few feet of bamboo instead of to replace the trees. So that requires denial under this board's rules as I understand it. The third point is the variance request does not present a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship in any way, shape, or form. This was a knowing violation and it can be repaired. And the code ordinances say they shall be repaired under threat of misdemeanor. So that's the third point that warrants denial. The fourth point out of 5 is that the variance should not be granted because the granting poses an adverse effect on the specific adjacent neighbor's property. He's lost his privacy now, he has the noises, and he's got a neighbor who has not cooperated in the past. This should not be rewarded. Specifically, number 5, and this may be the most important for this board to consider, it establishes a dangerous precedent. If parties are allowed to do now, cut trees down, violate the code, and ask for forgiveness later, it's going to increase more negative and inappropriate actions. The buffer zone was cut down illegally, without correcting any action, without apology, without attempting to address the issue, and granting the variance would be a tacit endorsement of this illicit activity, which I hope this board does not wish to encourage or endorse further. At a minimum, we would ask that this board continue until we can have a little more time to address this issue and maybe come to a resolution. We don't want to bring this into litigation, but this is very serious. My neighbor tried to do something similar when he bought his lot to split it up and cut some trees, and he was told, no, can't do that, so he didn't do it. So I've got an upstanding citizen here as my client who's just retained me to catch up on a lot of information. There are significant issues. I believe I've presented the 5 points which would require denial here today, but if not, we request a continuance. And if you have any questions for Mr. Ellis or myself, I'd be happy to address them.
All right. Yeah. You get a 5-minute rebuttal, sir.
So I guess at first I'd like to state that I feel maybe a little unprepared. I'm not an attorney by profession, so but I will address. It was inadvertently removed. We were under the understanding that because we had the driveway going down to my property that we could remove that 35 feet. That was my entire lot, and because mine was next to his, we didn't know that there was a buffer on that side, and because I guess the lot itself is it's narrow, so it doesn't allow for you to put a driveway in. So it wasn't, there were a lot of accusations. Nothing was intentional. We're trying to figure it out as we go, and we have been working with the planning department kind of throughout this whole process, trying to make sure we're doing everything right. We did receive the cease and desist letter via email a day or two ago. Kind of unaware that was going to come across, but
in regards to all his points that he's bringing up, a lot of them are false itself. We spoke with Mr. Ellis in regards to rectifying this issue with the buffer itself. He agreed upon that issue. He came on our land and we spoke with it. We have text messages with him indicating that he knew that this issue with us replanting the vegetative buffer would rectify the problem. He indicated to us that he was communicating with the board to rectify it in that means. Throughout this whole process, we have been working with the board. We've been trying to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. The statement stating that we constantly kept burning, that's false. Anytime that there was a problem, they came out there and they put out the fire and that was it. Now, once the fire was out, is there smoke? Possibly, yes. They were called out for that again. So all this.
That was over a 2-day period.
Correct. And, you know, this is talk about months and months ago stating that we are still doing this. We've been trying to be accommodating as possible to Mr. Ellis. And it seems that every time we do something, even though that we try our best to come to the board, he always has an issue with it, and it's going to be an ongoing problem.
All right. Any other comments before I turn it over to the board? You have a rebuttal.
Let me just briefly say that I think you may have heard that there was an agreement and then there was a correction that says, well, he knew. Yes, he knew, and he didn't agree to it. And so what was represented to the board is there was an agreement, and there was not. And so I provided multiple issues before this board why this should outright be denied. But I think a reasonable request as it continues to work through these to even see if they've complied. They also didn't mention anything about compliance with the past pond issues where they were supposed to provide a maintenance and drainage plan some 6 months ago. And so I think at a minimum, to see if we can find some common ground and resolution, there should be a continuance. However, if the board decides to vote today, we believe we presented under the 5 factors that it must be denied. Thank you.
Did you submit that paperwork, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And to whom?
In regards to that, we did submit the pond agreement, but the pond's not finished yet, so we don't have actually the diagram indicating the flow of water. Our contractor is in the process of finishing that, and once it is finished, we are submitting that form.
All right. Okay. Mr. Spees.
I'm just wondering, did y'all check about the 2 oak trees that you're not supposed to cut down, live oak trees? Did you check to get permission on that?
So there was one that I was aware of, one oak tree that did blow down. So after we removed the pine tree for the clearing, if you look at the plot, you remove all the pine trees. It's like the old saying, there's strength in numbers. I think simply what happened, it was an oak tree that was growing to the sunlight, because we wanted to keep all the oaks we could, right? We didn't want any pines, but we wanted oaks. It was right near our pond. We wanted trees around the pond. We're gonna have to go plant them. I mean, we do plan on planting the oak trees and several other trees back, but that was blown over. We came out there one day and the contractor said it had been knocked over.
Okay.
I only know of one oak tree.
Okay. Is that all, Mr. Spees? Okay, Mr. Swindell?
This is mainly a question for the staff here. Should we deny the variance request? Who guides what has to be done in response to, now the clearing the 50 feet that essentially we denied them to clear? I mean, there was a lot of talk about that, but I don't, that's not really our judgment, is it?
You want it? Oh, well, if the request is denied, the 50-foot buffer will have to be replanted.
Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, a replanting of a 50-foot buffer that's been cleared, sometimes a better plan is to come up with a landscaping plan or something that makes sense. Planting some plants that will take years to grow. We've seen this board do that in the past where, you come up with a replanting plan on a denial, and it's a tough situation. But no, I think y'all need to direct us on if it's denied, what would be replanted and how that replanting would take place. So the board would have to direct the staff.
So just help me out. How does that go? Do we deny it and then request that they submit that plan, or do we delay for a month and ask them to bring that plan back to us before we consider approval or denial?
Can I say something? I think practically speaking, it would be better for you all to have a plan to consider and postpone this case rather than just denying the case and then trying to work through it later.
That's what I think. All right, Mr. Daly.
Thank you, I'm done.
Yeah, there are, some property hardships with this. They did go to the planning commission to get a minor resub. It is a flag lot. That does pose its own certain hardships, as well as the 100-foot of the 200-foot power line servitude right-of-way that encroaches onto the east side of the property. So there are a lot of actual, I guess,
And the
property considerations with this one.
Staff keeps bringing up the 200-foot servitude, and that's in another lot. And they knew that when they purchased the property. So that's, and I don't know why the staff is taking their side in the argument over something that's in a whole nother lot that's not even being presented in front of the board today. The staff told
I'm
me
gonna ask
that
Mr.
I had to
Chairman.
hire a landscape architect if I went into that buffer for 5 feet. And they took out 900 feet by 50 feet of trees.
Sir,
I do want to
I don't
clarify
want
that
to-
there is a 100-foot right-of-way servitude on lots A1 and A2 that cannot be built upon. It's not all.
Yeah, but they knew
in
that when they
par-
bought it.
Excuse me.
Sir,
It's not all in parcel B.
Please sit. You had your opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, either Helen or Aaron, just looking at the survey.
All right, Mr. Daly?
I had I guess a more basic question. So we've got a 35-foot essentially driveway that was cleared or was cleared. And then the additional 50 feet that were cleared are on the next lot, A1. So that's 85-ish feet that were cleared. So the request was to have the replanting on the 35-foot strip of the driveway and no replanting on lot A1.
No,
Is that-
replanting on both lots is what we're asking.
No, what their request is. So I just wanted to clarify that that's how I'm reading the request.
I think we should ask the property owners to clarify what they're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think by default, because I have a flagpole lot, I have the authority, or I have the right to clear my driveway.
The driveway
That's the only way,
portion, right.
yeah, the access back to my lot. But, so I guess the request was to not have him, because your house is, I guess, he's got a 75-foot distance in between his house and the driveway. And so that 50-foot would put the trees, right 25 feet away from his house.
And correct.
Which is the reason we were asking to plant the bamboo to.
Right, and with that being said, speaking with Mr. Ellis, we did submit to the board text message in reference to him talking about the bamboo. And based on his conversations with us in the past, stating that he did correspond with the board and indicated to us that he did agree upon this. I don't know if there's any kind of documentation indicating that he did do that, just to show that there's no bad faith on our part. We're trying to do the right thing to rectify these problems. I'm not sure if they do or not, though.
Okay, thank you.
Answer that?
Not really, huh? Sorry, no. All right, Mr. Blush.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Forrester, you referenced earlier photographs and also videos, and to my knowledge, we've not been provided with that, any videos or any types of photos.
So I've brought the photos with me attached. I'm happy to walk them up, but it was in the email that was submitted, and I got a confirmed
Okay, I missed
receipt.
it. I apologize, my apologies, I missed that.
It was forwarded to you
Okay.
yesterday.
Okay, my apologies.
And my apologies for getting it to you so late.
Okay.
I'm just coming into the game late as well. But I would encourage you to listen to the videos. I've got pictures showing, and I can just hold them up. I'm happy to pass them to you, of the oak trees. Of the view.
Yeah.
There's multiple.
Aaron, do you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, could we pass those around and see those?
Certainly. We've got the unencumbered view now, where there's no privacy, and just to go through briefly. And then the videos that you referenced I couldn't bring a USB, but they're on electronically. I don't know if they could be played before the vote. But that's also in violation of the ordinance that I cited earlier. I think
I do have another question for you too, Mr. Forrester. You mentioned earlier that you would ask for some sort of delay to maybe possibly work through the issues with the other parties. What does that look like? What are we talking about doing here?
I came on a couple days ago. I'm trying to suggest something that works for the parties. Mr. Ellis went to the neighbors before. You haven't seen anything on an agreement that I've seen. Mr. Ellis confirms that there was no agreement. He knew about it and did not agree to it. So
Well,
I don't
can I
know
just
what
make a-
I don't know what that looks like, to be honest with you. But I'm asking for time to see if there can be some agreement. The ordinances shall be replaced.
Right, and,
So-
and I was going to make that statement, that just because your client has agreed doesn't mean that changes the ordinance in the real world.
And I don't think he has the power to do it. I'm just trying
Right.
to prose what I can, but I think the
Understand.
ordinance requires a replacement.
I do like the idea, if you are able to come to some kind of amicable agreement amongst yourselves, that'd be great, because, no one wants this to go to court. We want to find
No.
ways to work together if possible. Just my own personal feelings about that.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, just want to reiterate, as we did with the guy who was doing the timber, shall be replaced. It needs to be caliper inches. We need to look at the where it was located, what the grade of the tree was. So it's not just that simple.
No,
Other
yeah,
considerations are,
no,
need to take place.
I certainly understand the
Yeah.
caliper of the trees, that sort of thing.
And the
Absolutely.
code provides the guidance as to what shall be replaced.
Well, and also too, the staff, under staff comments, it says, should the board be in favor to replant a row of bamboo, submit a landscape plan showing the proposed replanting. I mean, that was already in the request. So, all
That
right,
would-
Mr. Daly, did you have something else?
Yeah, no, if we do delay, and I just recommend that we see a site plan with the house on parcel A1, because to me, it sort of reads like reducing the side setback to fit a residence in that spot, rather than, the land clearing aside, obviously that's an issue, but just in terms of how I read the variance, it would be to fit the residence on parcel A1, residence and access, driveway access. So I think that's more of what I think the variance issue. The land clearing is beside, set aside.
All right.
Thanks.
Do I have a motion
Mr.
at this
Chairman,
point?
just one last item
Yes.
too. Mr. Daly, you brought up a great point, because that 100-foot servitude is not able to be built upon, and that particular lot A1 is reduced significantly because of that. So a site plan showing the home and how it's accessed does make sense.
Yeah.
So,
They created that lot.
also too, that maybe staff, and the reason why I'm involved with this so much is because they've come to the BOA for the pond.
Right.
They've gone to the planning commission for a resub. I almost feel like maybe we could have given them better advice on the resub of these properties. Because of that 100-foot servitude is not able to be built upon, now it's creating a hardship. If they would have reduced the size of the lots A1 and A2 by removing that servitude, they would be under the requirements of 3 acres for land clearing permit and wouldn't even be here at this time. So maybe in a resub, by removing that acreages, they wouldn't even be required to have a land clearing permit. So it's just, one of those things we all could have done a better job with.
I went to administration back in October with this, and saying, please don't let them cut down the trees. And now we're here. So, and we still have the administration saying, well, let's do this, and let's push it over, and it's okay to have.
Sir, we really cannot have comments from the audience. Thank you, though.
Just briefly to touch upon what this gentleman stated, there's been nothing but brought before you today from the people seeking the variance of any hardship. So I will just note that has not been mentioned, pled, or sought, or argued by the parties requesting this
All
variance.
right, thank you. All right, Mr. Daly, anything else?
No, I'm finished. Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Swindell?
I'll make a motion. I'm inclined to not approve this variance, but I'll make a motion to delay this for a month with the condition that the property owners bring a proper plan to restore the buffer that was destroyed.
Okay, so you're asking for a landscape plan in addition to the postponement? Mr. Blush.
And I'll second on the condition that I'm also kind of in agreement with Mr. Swindell about this. I don't feel very comfortable at all with granting the variance. This was something that these gentlemen knew in advance going in before this property ever was split. This should have been anticipated either by themselves or by professional help. Or maybe we did drop the ball a little bit in suggesting that, but I don't think that's our role to be able to do that or have to do that. So I will second the motion, but like I said, I'm very, very concerned about this.
All right, it has been moved.
Just to clarify on that motion, is that to restore the buffer between parcel A2 and the western property, which is Mr. Ellis's property, or is that
No,
to
it's to
restore all
postpone.
buffers?
It's to postpone
To
this.
provide a plan
And provide a plan
for
for the
which
next.
buffer, though?
On something we're trying to continue. Maybe we should wait and see what the plaintiffs have and what the applicant has. That's the only thing I'm thinking. Maybe we shouldn't be putting,
Well, the staff made that request as well, so I
They
think.
did?
Yes, sir. So I think in order to follow that, their guidance as well. So what is on the table right now is to postpone this for a month, and then to come back with submit a landscape plan showing the proposed replanting and impose a timeline to complete the replanting. Okay? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries to postpone until next month.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we are going to address BOA case 2022-2820. Request by applicant in a CBF 1 community-based facility zoning district and A2 suburban zoning district for a waiver of the required pond setback on each side of the property line. The property is located at 24401 Highway 190, Lacombe. Applicant and representative is Mr. Chad Almquist, and we would ask the staff to read their comments.
The objective of the request is for a waiver of the required setback from the property line for an existing pond, which will be crossing the proposed property line. As shown on the attached survey, parcel A is proposed to be created to separate the existing residential uses from the proposed canoe and trail adventure business to be located on proposed parcel B. While there's no objection to the request, a maintenance agreement of the pond should be provided since the pond will be sitting on two separate parcels of land.
All right. Yes, sir, would you please state your name and your address?
Chad Almquist, and I do live at 24401 Highway 190.
All right, sir. Would you like to add any information to?
Not too much. We had the survey done and realized the property line kind of not split the pond, but nicked the pond, so back again. We just, the type of business we are, we're trying not to touch anything. Maybe the opposite of most cases you hear.
Yeah. All right. Is there anyone opposed to this particular variance request? All right. Is that all you'd like to say, sir? You have like 9 whole minutes.
I mean, I don't think you need much more information. We, the general idea was the customers would kind of see the pond and how beautiful the pond was, so we intentionally wanted it to be a little bit part of the commercial. Just didn't realize we needed a variance for that.
All right. Any comments from the board? All right. Is there a motion?
Approve it.
To approve the pond setback?
Yeah,
Subject to providing a maintenance agreement, Mr. Spees?
yes, that's correct.
Okay. So it has been moved to grant the waiver on the setback as long as there's a maintenance contract presented. Do I hear a second? It's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Blush?
Mr. Blush.
Okay, thank you. I just hear your tone of voice, that's why I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, will you please vote?
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to now address case 2022-2824. And this is a request by an applicant in an A1 and A2 suburban zoning district with a RO rural overlay to appeal the decision by parish official to deny the issuance of an administrative permit to operate a short-term rental. The property is located at 74450 Louisiana Highway 437 in Covington. Applicant and representative is Mr. Chance Mortensen. Do I have, okay, would like to have the staff read their comments, and then we'll ask you.
The St. Tammany Parish Council adopted the short-term rental regulations last year, which took effect February 1 of this year. These short-term rentals are allowable under a rural overlay with the submission and approval of an administrative permit. Mr. Chance Mortensen, which is the applicant for the variance request, submitted a short-term rental administrative permit application to the Planning Department February 16th. And after reviewing the permit application and all supporting documents submitted, the Department of Planning and Development denied the application for the following reasons. The applicant failed to meet all the application requirements imposed in the regulating article. That includes an informational brochure that was required to be submitted with the permit application, which did not have the contact information for the Department of Planning and Development in the event that a guest wished to file a complaint or note a violation. Parking details, the trash collection procedure and schedule, information regarding the neighborhood and surrounding area, including but not limited to restrictions on parking, noise, trash, and any other pertinent information that the guest should be aware of. The applicant had previously conducted a type of short-term rental being applied for, which resulted in the creation of a public or private nuisance, based in part at least on several formal complaints by guests or neighbors of the short-term rental that were received by the Planning Department. The Planning Department did receive several emails, phone calls, and letters noting neighborhood concern for the operation of the short-term rental without a permit and in a manner that raises noise, traffic, trash, and health and safety concerns. The current request by the applicant is to appeal the denial of the short-term rental permit by the Planning Department. If the board chooses to overturn the Planning Department's denial of the short-term rental application for an administrative permit, it should be subject to the following conditions, which are listed in your packet, items 1 through 3. They include 2 sworn affidavits, one of which is filled out by the proposed operator, specifying a designated local responsible party and certifying that they will be available 24 hours a day when the short-term rental is being rented, among other things. The second affidavit is executed by the proposed operator, certifying that the proposed operator has read and understood all the minimum standards and that they will be compliant through the duration of the permitting term. And then the third thing that we will still need to obtain is a copy of the informational brochure with all the information as required per the ordinance. I would also like to note one other thing. One reason that the Planning Department did deny this application was subject to several neighborhood complaints. I have copies for the board. The applicant did submit a public records request and obtain these copies, so these copies contain everything that the applicant has already received, and the Planning Department still continues to receive complaints from surrounding neighbors to this day.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir, would you come forward, state your name and address?
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Masca, 1974 North Highway 190, Covington. I am retained counsel for Mr. Chance Mortensen, who's present with us today. Mr. Mortensen went through the application process for the castle to use it as a short-term Airbnb. And as you heard, he was actually provided on February 16th from the Planning Department an approval. It says right here, February 16, 2022, the St. Tammany Parish Department of Planning and Development has no objection that the applicant Chance Mortensen Airbnb receive an occupational license to operate short-term rental at the following location, 74450 Highway 437, Covington, Louisiana, 70435. That was given to my client as approved.
And the date was what?
February 16.
This year.
This year. The next day, my client went to the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff and received his business license dated February 17, 2022, to operate the same Airbnb. He then received a letter on March 18, roughly 30 days later, telling him that his previously permitted application was being denied. When you're permitted, and then they tell you you're not permitted, that's a revocation, that's not a denial. He had been permitted, he had received his business license and his occupational license, and a month later, he got a letter saying, we're denying you your application. They also, in that letter, cited the wrong ordinance. They cited some beer crafting ordinance when they did the 22- whatever it was exactly, I'm not sure, I don't have that letter in front of me. But I do recall reading that and being a little bit stunned that they told him there was a brochure error, which he corrected that same day. He went back that day, he got that letter and said, here's my brochure information. And everything else that had been asked for except for the affidavits. He submitted his information again to clarify and correct. What then was left was the heart of this matter, which is that stack of emails from one neighbor, 74458, and I'm sure they're here today. There's one contiguous landowner around his 12-acre lot that since April of 2020 has been making complaints. They've complained about his personal use. They've complained about him having parties. They've complained about the Airbnb is going to do things in the future. I've got her language. Miss Dolores Faulkner has said things. We have to address this before it gets out of control. She says this place is a nightmare. Living next to it's a nightmare. There's a litany of things that she said, and I really don't think we need to focus too much on that. What the board does need to focus on is Mr. Mortensen submitted 13 signed statements from contiguous landowners, all that were either in favor of or had no opposition to his Airbnb application. Then you've got one sounding off landowner who in one recent email in March of 2022 brought to the attention of, I think it was a code of enforcement officer, she brought to the attention of the numerous complaints. But the numerous complaints come from one party. That is not the way we're supposed to operate. If you've got 14 neighbors and 13 of them say, go ahead, we have no problem with this, we think it's a good idea, but one keeps hammering with the emails and the phone calls over and over again, that's called the tyranny of the minority. That's not what we're supposed to do here. We're supposed to help people use their land in efficient and effective ways, especially for commerce, for their own personal use. So our problem was, we really believed when my client was told that he was denied, which again, in fact, he was revoked in March of 2022, he was not provided the procedures by which the revocation occurred. Number two, and which we think this is crucial, he wasn't told the difference between complaints, supposed complaints, and then we all, again, you can look through them, they come from one property, which complaints were his personal use of his own property versus complaints of Airbnb rentals going out of control. And what's really important for the board to consider is from the time he was approved on February 16 to the time they then told him he was denied on March 18, nothing happened in between those 31 days. There was no calling of police for some outrageous party or some loud noises. Nothing happened except the same landowner, who you're probably going to hear from, sent in more emails saying, here's more photos, he posted this, he said that, I'm tired of this. But ultimately what we're dealing with is we only have one neighbor, Miss Dolores Faulkner. Her husband is David Lambert. Now, Mr. Lambert had an attorney send in 2 different letters at 2 different times, but they're the same property, 74428, by my client's next door neighbors. They've never liked this idea. They've never been happy with him. And they've taken the opportunity to amplify his own use of this property, like when he has a Halloween party, or when he has a Super Bowl party, or when he has a Mother's Day get-together. There's an email that flies in saying, he's at it again, he's doing it again. He can have as many Super Bowl parties as he wants, as long as he's not violating anybody's laws or rules. It's his property. He can have guests there every day if he wants to. It's getting ridiculous to the point of harassment, intimidation. This is not what this board or the Planning and Development Board is supposed to be used for, is to have one neighbor constantly hammering another over their personal use of their property. That neighbor, and I'll show you all a photo, it's kind of interesting, I'm sorry, it's falling in between here. Would you help me grab that? I'm sorry. When you look at this little overhead that in fact Ms. Faulkner had attached to one of her emails, you will see that this red circle is the castle. This uncircled piece of property is where my client actually dwells some of the time on his land. And over the other circle is Ms. Faulkner, the complainant's property. Between them, diagonally, there are trees, shrubs, and foliage for about 150 yards. And my client had squared off a little pen square here to show the closest neighbor to his actual property that's not circled, it's just in a square. That neighbor has never complained about his use at the castle for either his own personal parties or for any Airbnb guests. So the closest neighbor there has never made a complaint, but somebody 150 yards away through foliage, and if you look at those emails, you're going to see photos, these kind of grainy, zoomed in photos that just through shrubbery and trees, they show lights on at night. And I'm reading these complaints and I'm thinking, you're showing people that you're trying to make a complaint to, you're complaining about a supposed party, and yet all you have is a picture of lights on it in the evening. And it's that type of repetitive, over and over again submission that we feel it's grown beyond just one neighbor having, an objection. It's grown into harassment at this point. So I'm getting low on time. Would the board like to see that photo?
Yes, please.
So just to, and I know we have a little rebuttal time, but I would just like to say, once again, only one neighbor at 74428 has made any formal complaints that we're aware of. That's what the public record request showed. If more others had made these complaints, we were not told of them, my client wasn't told of them, and when he was given his revocation in March, he was not told of anybody, he was just told complaints. I would draw the council's attention to the actual permit denial section that applies, 22592A5. The language says, the applicant has previously conducted this type of short-term rental being applied for, which results in creation of public or private nuisance based at least in part on several formal complaints by guests or neighbors. Neighbors is plural. I do not think any fair reading of that statute means that one neighbor can make 1,000 complaints. I think it means you have to have more than one property owner making complaints to be under consideration here. So we don't have that. And again, it says that the applicant has conducted the type of short-term rental that results. We don't know that his conduct using his short-term rental resulted in any complaints, because most of the complaints we received had to do with his personal use of the space. So again, that's what's happened. He was approved. We've got both the approval on the 16th of February, the approval on the 17th of February. A month later, he's told he's denied. That's not true. He was revoked. He wasn't told who made complaints or how he could fix them. He was just told there were several complaints. Our public record request shows the complaints all come from one neighbor. We believe it's arbitrary and capricious to grant the license, then deny it 30 days later when it's actually a revocation and nothing had changed in that time period. And all those complaints were on file when they approved my client in February.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is Ms. Faulkner here or Walker? All right. Would you please step up? You have 5 minutes. Please give us your name and where you live.
Brittany Walker with the law firm of Daigle, Feast, and Kesnick, located at 227 Highway 21. Our firm represents David Lambert and Dolores Faulkner, who are the direct neighbors of the location at issue, which is known as the Covington Castle. In fact, they have a shared driveway, which is the only way our clients can even access their home. And Mr. Mortensen wants to focus on the 13 neighbors. If you look in the packet that y'all have, you can see where the property is. The only actual neighbor are our clients. It's in a rural area. What other 13 neighbors? There aren't any. The short-term rentals that take place at the Covington Castle constantly bring a large amount of renters, as large as over 100 people, heavy traffic, which includes party buses, loud music, and immense disruption to this low-density residential neighborhood. and have prevented our clients from being able to peacefully occupy their home. The short-term rental ordinance makes it clear they can be denied if it creates a nuisance, and specifically states that commercial functions are prohibited, which includes receptions, fundraising events, amplified outdoor music, and festivals. Mr. Mortensen is not attempting to use the Covington Castle as a getaway for families. Instead, he's attempting to use it to host large parties and events in direct violation of the ordinance. When we originally reached out to Barry Mott, we were told that Mr. Mortensen was informed that he could no longer utilize it as a short-term rental unless and until he received a permit. It was at that time that he took down the Covington Castle from Airbnb. However, the short-term rentals, the parties, and the nuisance never stopped. Instead, he just took the other avenues to continue to advertise and to lease out the Covington Castle. For example, he began working with P. Harris Agency Entertainment, which is a marketing and branding consulting company out of New Orleans. To this day, it is listed as an event venue. It says you can book the Covington Castle to host an event, a performance, a speaking engagement, or a digital marketing commercial. So even after his short-term rental permit was denied, it's still listed today. He also created an account with Give, Send, Go, which allows renters to make what appears to be a donation to rent the Covington Castle. We have on here, just days after his permit was denied, a lady by the name of Eder Lacayo. She made a payment of $600, and the description states, November 11th for cookout, 100 guests. This is not a small party, and clearly he's renting it out. The same day, she made a payment for $575. It says Labor Day weekend party, September 3rd through 5th. So he's clearly renting it out, even after the denial. Well, if you actually go to Eder Lacayo on her Facebook page, because it's public, she advertises that she's having a large-scale Bridgerton costume party at the Covington Castle on Labor Day weekend. She even attaches photos of the Covington Castle and states that it's merely 40 minutes away from New Orleans. Then just days ago, it was booked by a guest on the same site that reads Grandma's 70th birthday party, December 9th and 10th. Mr. Mortensen has expressly stated to our clients that regardless of the outcome today, he fully intends to continue renting and advertising it as a short-term rental, which is evident by the fact that regardless of the permit being denied, he hasn't stopped accepting that the Covington Castle and utilizing it as a short-term rental. The parish should not reward people who intentionally violate the law. And also, we believe that it's important that we look at part of the short-term rental ordinance, which provides the applicant who's been convicted of any crime involving drug, vice, or felony in the last 10 years, the permit should be denied. It's come to our attention, and we had notified the board already, that Mr. Mortensen has pending charges for an adult felony, cruelty to juveniles, and adult misdemeanor, which are set for a felony jury trial in a few days on May 9th, which we think the board should consider. Our clients ask that the board uphold the Department of Planning and Development's denial and allow Mr. Lambert and Ms. Faulkner to attempt to live peacefully in their home. And I have copies of the documents if you'd like to see them directly, which shows that he's still advertising these short-term rentals.
We will see those.
And that's it, unless you have any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for?
Let's get through rebuttal and then we'll come back.
All right, we'll go ahead and do the rebuttal.
Well, Ms. Faulkner's here personally because she wanted
Okay.
to say a few words for
Thank
the
you.
board, if that's okay.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dolores Faulkner. I live at 74428 Highway 437. Chance Mortensen and our property shares a connected driveway. It's a shared driveway. And that's where the initial, we've been dealing with this for 2 years. And the initial issue was there was no barriers there. And so all of these party people that were coming over all night long, because of course they arrive at 4 p.m. in the evening, and then they stay all night partying there. Well, they were coming in, they were driving into our yard, turning around in the grass area. They were blocking the driveway, so when I would get ready to leave, or if I wanted to come back in, they were in the driveway blocking it. I would blow the horn at them. They would wave at me. They would shoo me away. They would curse at me. I have been called every name under the sun by these people who are over there. This is a constant with that. And so over time, because it became so overwhelming, Chance came down. Actually, Chance came over here and he got that permit. And because he thought he won the permit, he came down and he demanded that we put a gate up there so that the people wouldn't come there. And literally, right after the gate came up, a party bus unlocked the gate, came down the driveway. They rocked the whole house. It was so loud. They come around to his castle, picked up the partiers, came back out, pulled in front of our house on Lee Road, and blew those air horns to let us know that they were doing that. And this is the kind of behavior that we're having to deal with every weekend. We don't know who's going to be in there. It's a safety issue. I've had some of his people come up. I used to not have any curtains in my house other than my bedroom, and I was working in my office, and they came up to the French doors. He put his head up to the window and knocks at it and says, "Where's the castle? This is late at night." It scared me. And then I've had deliveries. I've had delivery people come up and tell me that they've tried to deliver stuff over at the castle and they can't get anybody to answer the door. If I could bring the stuff back there and deliver it to them. I've had people come up and ring our doorbell and ask where the party's at. They can't figure out how to get to the castle. I've had all sorts of issues with just people coming in and, I'm sorry, they're disrupting me. I got kind of off track there. I've had people come in and knock at our doors at all hours. Recently, we've had he told somebody that he was not going to be able to do it no more, but to come around, and he had to do some type of I don't know how he said it. It was some type of tour or something, and he couldn't find Chance, and he wanted to know if David was Chance so that he could take this tour. Well, he came into the yard looking for him, And so that's just that aspect. Then the other aspect is that since everything has went on, Chance comes up and he intimidates us. I'm old. I'm 63 years old. David's 65 years old. And he comes up there and he's told David, he says, "I will not have you call the board no more. It is over. It is done. You cannot do this no more. I'm not going to stand for it." And just this weekend, he came up and I'm standing outside in my yard by my husband's truck, and he came up and just stood there and puffed on his cigarette and waved at me and said, "Have a good day. I know something that you don't know." And that's just this little petty, childish, and I don't understand it. Like, he has his own driveway, but yet for some reason, and I don't know why, we're like a magnet. He has 12 and a half acres, but my driveway where my car is where everybody wants to reside, and everybody wants to come up, and everybody wants to infringe on us. Where is my sanctity? Why do I not have the right, like every other person in this parish, to be able to go home and not have people coming up and bothering me every night? Why am I not entitled to that? What happened? Why are we even considering anything like this? I don't get it. I don't understand it. But anyway, it's just, it's horrible. If you've never lived next to somebody who has constant rental of parties, large events, you would never understand the horror that you have to go through. The horror. And then that, with him trying to tell you there's no other neighbors. It's only me. I'm the only one being affected. That's why I complain.
Thank you. We appreciate your information.
Thank you. I'll speak quickly, and my client would also like to say some things within our 5 minutes. I'd just like to say most of, if not all, most of those complaints have been recorded and emailed previously at the time my client received his approval. This is nothing new. This was all considered, and he still received his approval. And then, like I said, without explanation, 31 days later, it was revoked. Number two, council knows that allegations are not a conviction. Anybody can allege anything, you deal with it in court, and it's not a conviction. And lastly, he's not in control of the P. Harris people. If they've put something on the website for P. Harris, that can be taken down. He didn't ask them to do that. He's not in control of them. But I would ask Chance if you want to come up and say anything.
Sir, could you please just spell your last name?
Maska.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chance Mortensen. I built this castle originally to live in, and I ended up breaking my neck building it. When the government started locking everyone down in March of 2020, schools were shutting down and everything. You know, me and my son opened up our hearts and our castle so people from all walks of life could have private adventures away from pandemic and all that stuff with their friends and family. And many people have had wonderful adventures there. And not all of them. In fact, an extreme minority of them have had parties, none of which goes out into the front yard or the side yard. They stay in the back, they stay inside. I had suggested to Mr. David and Miss Dolores that, you know, hey, we can like block and not let anybody else come down your driveway if that's our shared driveway, if that's what you want. And this was in 2020. So they recommended that I put a chain up with a no trespassing sign. I found a plastic chain so it'd be easiest, it wouldn't be heavy and all that. And I told him, I says, you know, I don't think this is going to do it. I think that it's too easy to take it down. I think a gate needs to be up here. The good news is I recorded that conversation. And the good news I have more good news, excuse me. I recorded another conversation between me and Mr. David. When he finally agreed, just 2 months ago, a month and a half, 2 months ago, to put a gate up. And me and him, I bought all the material, and me and him worked on that gate together. And he was happy with it. I've got recordings of him saying, I think this will work. This is great. I'm not trying to get on anybody's bad side. When they say they're the only neighbor, I have 14 neighbors surrounding the property lines. They're the second closest neighbor. The closest neighbor loves what we're doing. Never had any, doesn't have any complaints, never complained. As a matter of fact, 13 of those neighbors have signed affidavits stating with a comment section that they have no problem, that they love what we're doing, that they're glad that, you know, somebody got to carry out their dreams. And I believe because I got to build my dream, because I got into construction when I was 14 years old, was to be able to be a part of building a castle. I didn't know I'd get to build my own. And again, I'm not trying to bother anybody, and I'm open to any mitigation to make them happy. And I've expressed that several times to them. And it just doesn't seem to be, they don't seem to want to work with me. Now, I brought my son to all of our neighbors, and he's the one that knocked on the door, and he's the one that started the conversation with them, because he's 9 years old, and he doesn't think what's going on is right. So I've been complained about by one address. What can I do to mitigate this? What can I do? That's what I'd like to know. How can we help other people? It's a castle. Like, I didn't build a house, I built a castle.
All right, sir, thank you. Okay, a rebuttal?
The problem with a lot of what Mr. Mortensen said is, you're right, he built a castle. But unfortunately, he built it in a residential area. He should have known when he built it there that it was not meant for large events. And this idea that he doesn't know that it's on this entertainment website to be booked as a commercial event, there's no way anyone believes that. The fact of the matter is you can look on the map that's in your packet. The only direct neighbors are our clients. They're to a point where they cannot enjoy and live in their home anymore. There has been no amendable conversation between these clients, and unfortunately, it's past that point to where we have had to advise as lawyers that you need to call the police and stop calling us. It's a very difficult situation that they're in, and it's unfortunate, but the fact is they deserve to be able to live in their home peacefully. And he should have built a castle in a different zone to where he could live out, quote unquote, his dream properly. It is not our client's fault that he didn't check the zoning beforehand. Anything else you want to say?
I just want to say, I bought that house so that my family, my grandson's family lives on Lee Road, and I wanted him to inherit my property. That house has a lot of meaning to us, and I didn't buy in a commercial zone. And when he talks about the neighbor behind us, like, that neighbor has nothing to do with this, because I don't even know, he has like a baseball people that go back there. I don't even know if they're legal or not, and they don't bother us. Those people go back there, they hit that baseball, they end at 5 or 6 o'clock, those people are out of there. I've never had, not one single time has those people come up and knocked at my door in the middle of the night. Not one single time has those people asked where that field is. I don't have no problem with the people next door. They don't bother nobody. His group comes up constantly. I mean, how much am I supposed to endure? I mean, tell me, what am I supposed to do? Where is my right to have a peaceful and safe home where I can go outside and sit and enjoy myself? That's what I used to do. I'm locked in like a caged animal. At 62 years old, I'm having to undo a chain and a gate that I don't even want. I never have had myself locked in. I've never had curtains in my house. I don't like it. I can't get my mail no more. I can't do anything that a normal household can do. How much more do I need to endure? Please tell me. How much more?
Thank you. All right, Mr. Blanche.
I guess I had a couple of questions. First off, with regards to the one question about the informational packet for contact, I guess the contact information was provided within, did you say 24 hours after the denial or revocation of the?
I believe the same day, or within 24 hours? Within a couple of hours. Within a few hours of him receiving it.
All right, secondly, the trash removal, that was another issue. Was that ever rectified? Okay, and so it's under a contract with a company?
Yes.
Okay. With regards to the complaints that have come forth, what's been the disposition of any of those that, and what I mean by that is, have there been any citations written?
None.
Okay. Any warnings from police officers?
Nothing aware of.
Okay.
I have called the police a number of times. That's not true.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Well,
We're called.
I understand. I did call the police
Yes, ma'am.
several times.
The other thing I have to, and I guess I'm considering, because I agree with the fact that this woman is certainly entitled, and this gentleman are certainly entitled to the quiet enjoyment of their property, just as you are, you have rights as well. However, those have to be in balance, and it seems as though right now they are not balanced. It seems somewhat weighted to your side. And the other question I have for you is, how many guests does the fire marshal allow you to have for a short-term rental at your property? Numbers, how many guests can stay overnight?
To stay overnight?
Yes, sir.
Please stand.
I'm sorry. Apologize.
Talking about
The Miss Erin Cook from Code Enforcement, we put 15 on there according to the amount of bedrooms and couches that we have that make beds, futons, things like that. And we put 15 legally could stay the night. That's our rules. She didn't express, I don't remember her expressing that we could have any more or not have that many. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But our rules are 15 and no more.
Okay, and that's fine. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, for a short time, and I said overnight, but what I mean by this is, are you in fact having, 100 or 75 or 50 people showing up for events? Because what I'm getting at, and I'll have to agree with the opposing attorney, this is not an event center. It is a
Correct.
It's a short-term rental for overnight lodging, or maybe multiple night lodging.
Correct.
But beyond that, there shouldn't be weddings, there shouldn't be parties, there should not be anything along that lines. Big barbecues where a lot of people are invited. That's not generally the essence of what was
For the
approved.
Airbnb, I totally agree with you 100%, sir. But for my personal use, I should be able to use my property the way I want to. If I want to have a wedding on my property, because me and her are going to get
100%.
married here soon, I should be able to do that.
No question. I agree 100%. However, I do question this woman who's really excited about having a party at your place. She's going to be having a lot of folks over. I don't know how you justify that or explain that. Aside from she just maybe made it up and wants her friends to think she's going to the castle.
Well, she called me up one day.
Okay.
And I answered my phone. And I was like, how'd you get my number? She didn't accurately explain, and I don't remember if she did, how she got my number. But she asked if she could have a party at the castle. And I said, you inviting me? She told me, absolutely. We
That's not a
happen to
private party,
have
though,
some
correct?
shared friends.
That's a paid party, though, correct?
No, sir. We happen to have some mutual friends.
Okay.
And I asked her how many of them were going to be there. And she told me there are going to be about 15 friends that you know, but the other people, I don't know, but I get to meet them. And I says, it'd be nice if we could have a party together. That'd be great. What do we do about all the other, stuff like cleaning and all that other good stuff? And they said they'd help me. I said, wait a minute, I'll help you. And she corrected her. She goes, yes, you can help me clean up if you allow me to have the party. I said, that'd be great. A little later on down the conversation, I said, what would really be great? We could sure use some donations for our fundraiser because we're trying to not lose this place.
Mm-hmm.
And so she found it in her heart to make the donation. And then she put in the notes whatever she wanted to put. And we've had a few donations done just like that for people that know that I built this, friends of mine.
Okay.
And want to, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Is that it, Mr. Blake?
Yes, sir.
All right, I would bring us back to the point that this was the request by the applicant to appeal the decision that the parish officials to deny the issuance of an administrative permit. So that's what we're looking at. Any other comments? Okay, Mr.
It says that A1, A2's suburban zoning districts with a RO rural overlay. Explain that.
This is the zoning designation. A2 suburban is single-family residential, minimum lot size of 1 acre. And the rural overlay, it's an overlay in addition to the A2 suburban. Under the rural overlay, short-term rental is listed as an administrative permit.
So hotels wouldn't be allowed there.
No, hotel is not a listed use under the rural overlay or the 8-2 suburban.
Okay.
All righty, Mr. Daly?
Okay, so we have a new ordinance, and it's rolled out. And we have an applicant, and there's, I guess, previous nuisance issues with the site. So there's issues with that. So I don't see how us overruling staff does anything, because as soon as that permit comes back and say there's an event and there's a nuisance, then it gets suspended. And then it's another, I think it tacks on a year then to reapplying. And I don't know if the situation right now would be 1 year to reapply, but I feel like there's a rectification that's beyond what we do, which is not, adjudicate that nuisance. It's really just this review. So it's more of a comment for us.
All right. And in your information, you had stated in the short-term rental agreement that it sleeps 16 and that there are 5 rooms, so just so you know.
15.
On the rental form, it says 16. I'm just saying that's
Oh,
what we have.
okay, it does. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The question was asked, I wanted clarification for the board. Okay. All right. Mr. Blosh, any more comments?
If I could just clarify one thing that was mentioned too, there was a mention of a permit being issued and then revoked. I just wanted to clarify for the board that the letter sent by Ms. Cook was an approval for the applicant to seek an occupational license from the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office requires that an applicant receive a letter from the Department of Planning in order to apply for an occupational license, and our short-term rental ordinance requires an occupational license to apply for a short-term rental permit. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. So it was not a granting of the permit, it was a granting of the approval letter to seek an occupational license. I just wanted to clarify that for the board.
Thank you. All right. With that being said, I would open, if there are no further comments from the board, I'd open for a motion. Mr. Blosh.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to offer a motion to deny case 2022-2824. And my findings on that it seems as though we've not provide, or we're not protecting everyone in this case. In other words, the folks that are living next door, it seems to me, and my belief is that they are being affected, their life is being affected by numerous guests, whether it be private or otherwise. And so I would move to deny the request for variance or approval, I'm sorry.
And just to clarify, that's the motion to deny
Right.
the decision and uphold the decision of the parish official.
That's correct.
Okay.
Deny the appeal and uphold the official
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So I'll second that motion, but I just want to be clear that a vote of yay continues, like, upholds the denial in this case.
Correct.
That's correct. That's right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Go ahead and let's vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
I believe that the Impostado, we can go back to that case. Is that correct? Okay. That would be case number 2022-2817, case number 5. Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so this is a request by the applicant in HC2 Highway Commercial Zone District for a waiver of the required street planning buffer to provide additional parking spaces. Property is located at 240 Highway 22 East, Madisonville. Impostado sellers, Micah?
It's Mika.
Mika, pretty name,
Thank you.
Impostado. Would you please state your, the staff will give their comments, and then we'll ask for your name and.
Sure.
Thank you.
The objective of the request is to remove the entire required street buffer area and a required number of shrubs and trees to provide 8 additional parking spaces for the customers dining at the restaurant. While the minimum required number of parking spaces is provided on the site, there's no objection to the request considering that the additional spaces will prevent parking within the highway right-of-way, which causes safety concerns for the pedestrians and vehicles. The configuration of the property prevents the addition of the parking spaces elsewhere within the site. Should the board be in favor of the request, it should be subject to the 4 points listed here on the staff report.
All right, thank you. Would you please state your name and
Sure.
address?
It's Mika, M-I-C-A, Caprito, C-A-P-R-I-T-T-O. And the address, you want the restaurant address?
That's fine.
240 Highway 22 East, Madisonville, 70447.
All right, thank you. All right,
So there was a miscommunication in time for the meeting today. We were under the impression it was at 6 o'clock tonight. My attorney, who was representing me, with all the paperwork, he's got all the plans for what we proposed to do. He could not come for 2 o'clock because I didn't even find out until it was after it had already started, which is why I was late for the meeting. So we're hoping to see if we can get it postponed for another month or whatever, whenever the next meeting is.
All
So
right.
he can come and take care of this.
okay. Do I,
You wanna go
go ahead, Mr. Spees,
That we can postpone it.
Thank
to the
you,
next
I
meeting.
appreciate that.
till next month? Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone till
Perfect.
next month.
Thank you, and
okay?
we'll get notification as to the date and time.
We will have to vote on that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's okay.
Mr. Spees? All in favor, it will be postponed until June, and you will receive
Perfect.
notification.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, thank you for coming all the
Thank
way
you.
in for that.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I'm dressed the way I am, but I wasn't expected to be here until tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 2022-2825, request by applicant in a 1-2 industrial zoning district for waivers of the required western and southern planting buffers and required number of Class A and Class B trees, and to reduce the minimum required width of a two-way driveway from 24 feet to 18 feet. The property is located at the north end of Marion Lane, Mandeville, Louisiana. The applicant is Magnolia Water Utility Operating Company, who is here to represent already. The staff will make their comments, and then we'd ask you to step up, please.
I'd like to bring to your attention to the aerial here. As you can see, this is the existing site of the Magnolia Water Utility Company. And if you turn to the next page, what they're planning to do here is to provide a storage building as well as offices. The request here is not to have to provide the required buffers and also to allow for the driveway to remain as it is currently constructed on the property.
Okay, and staff comments are, okay, that's it. All right. Yes, sir, your name
Thank
and
you.
your address, please.
Pacey McWilliams, and address is 4 St. Anne Drive, Mandeville, 70471.
Thank you.
So, as Helen laid out, it is an existing sewage treatment facility that's at the back of Alamosa Park, or about halfway in, used to be the back. And it's down a long skinny driveway, and what they're proposing to do is add a maintenance and storage building back on that lot. And the reason for the ask for the variance for these things is that there's an existing fence that's back there on the site where it's already cleared, and to provide those planting buffers, you'd remove the fence and have to actually clear further to get to the setbacks to be able to create it. So the idea is it's already hidden back in the middle of nowhere, and we're going to leave it that way. And then the driveway is an existing driveway that services the property. It's important to note that the facility is not for public use. This is for Magnolia Water to use themselves, so it's not for public access or use. The project will make an improvement to where the driveway meets the road right now. It's just a gravel drive. We're going to pour a concrete apron with a 24-foot normal drive, make access a little easier and cleaner. But to widen it another 6 or 8 feet is just going to give you more visibility back to a sewer treatment plant. So the idea was leave the driveway alone just as it is.
All right, sir. Is there anyone that is opposed to this particular variant request? All right. With that said, do I have any comments from the board? No comments from the board. Well, that's it. Let's close up. Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion?
As requested?
As requested, yeah.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we approve as requested. Would you please vote?
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. All right, let's look at case 2022-2826, request by applicant in an A4 single-family residential zoning district to increase the maximum allowable length of an accessory structure from 50 to 60 feet. The property is located at 41473 Hervig Bluff Road, Slidell, Louisiana. Applicant is Mark Moreau. Staff comments?
The objective of the request is to allow for the construction of a 2,400 square foot accessory building. Although no hardship has been demonstrated, staff is not opposed to the request, considering that the proposed accessory building will be located on a 7.259 acre parcel of land. It will not exceed the maximum allowable 7.5% of the total area of the lot.
All right, thank you. All right, and who's representing the case? Please state your name and address, sir.
Mark Moreau, 41473 Herwig Bluff Road, Slidell, Louisiana.
All right, sir, would you like to add anything to this?
Well, we were, my brother and I are going to build a building for storage, just for all the extra stuff around the house. And I had got this building in 2020 because of the price. And I've had it since then. And I went to go apply for the permits earlier this year, first of this year, and I heard it was too big. So I just, so I went through this process, and here I am now.
All right,
it was 10 foot too long.
All right.
And I didn't know there was a requirement on a 50-foot building.
All right. Is there anyone opposed to this? All right, I believe Mr. McDonald, is that correct? Please come forward. Please state your name and your address.
John McDonald, 41580 Herwig Bluff Road, Slidell, Louisiana, 70461. My wife, Cynthia McDonald.
Welcome. Yes, sir.
I would first off say I'm not necessarily here to oppose vehemently the request for the variance. Really here to try to get some information and some clarification. We had no idea it was going to be built till we saw the yellow sign down the street from us. I'm trying to find out what is the use going to be, why are we looking at a 2,400 square foot building? What is the use going to be? Why does it need to be that big, exceed the 50-foot length? Then, I guess the other point I would like to make, if you do grant the variance, is it limited to this particular building per the plans that are in the application? And is it can it only be constructed at the location indicated in the application? And I ask those two things because Mr. Morrow has brought in clay fill, but he's brought it in on my property line, not the area where this building is intended to be built. So I'm just trying to make sure I have a clear understanding of what's going to happen before I say yay or nay or anything like that.
Can anyone in the staff answer that? Yeah.
As far as the request, it's for an accessory building. I cannot give you the content of what will be exactly stored inside. However, it's to be used as an accessory building, not for commercial use. Yes, it has to be the same plans as submitted in the application form as well as with the building permit, and it will have to sit exactly as shown on a site plan.
What is an acceptable accessory use to an A4 zoning?
Well, an accessory building is accessory to the main residence. So, the homeowner can store their belongings inside of the building.
Okay. All right.
And I think maybe if we hear rebuttal, maybe we can get some clarification from the homeowner. And also, I would just put one caveat on what Helen said as well, is that this board does have the authority to grant certain conditions and stipulations on a variance request. So if you all were to condition the approval on a certain location on the property, that is within your authority to do.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Morrow, you want to rebuttal?
Well, what we're going to be putting in the building is some trailers that we have on the property, just trying to clean the property up. Extra things that we have in an older house, we're trying to get out of there. My brother wants to store his big boat in there when a hurricane's coming because he's got to get it out of the water and we don't have where to put it. The sandy clay he's referring to by his property line is basically just a storage area. We just had 2 trucks dumped there a couple of times, and we feed off of that onto other areas around the property. And so we're not putting anything there. We're not building anything there. So.
Right, and that's what I wanted to know, is why was that
Yeah.
still being put there?
Yeah.
It's flooding my property.
Oh, well.
And gentlemen, if y'all can please just address the board, and y'all have time for rebuttal as well.
Okay. So that was just kind of an area we had convenient for our truck to back in there and just dump the dirt. And just so we feed off of it, taking dirt around the property, filling up stump holes that are sinking and stuff like that. So we're not building anything there.
Okay, thank you. Do you want another rebuttal, sir?
No, we're fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Swindell?
Well, as we have with other individuals that have made a similar application, you have other adjacent property owners. Have you had any conversation with them regarding the additional size of this building?
No, I haven't.
All right. Mr. Spees?
Morrow, maybe you could exchange phone numbers with the gentleman out there and, y'all can communicate about, he would know who to call.
We have our numbers.
Okay, great.
That's my neighbor right there.
Okay, great. That's it.
All righty, Mr. Blosh?
Yeah, I just want to ask the neighbors next door, are you okay with the location of that building where it's going to be at? Do you have any issues with that, or?
As long as it goes in that location, as per the drawing, we're fine.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay,
Wonderful, okay.
All right. Are there any other comments from the board? I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Spees?
That we pass it.
All right. So your motion is that we approve the length of the accessory building from 50 to 60 feet?
And they're going to go ahead and, right, correct. That's right, correct.
All right. Do I hear a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve, allowing the length of the accessory structure from 50 to 60 feet. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, we forgot to vote. I'll just tell you. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. Will you please vote?
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving right on along. Okay, we're going to look at BOA case 2022-2829. Staff, please read their remarks.
The request for the applicant is an after-the-fact variance to allow for the replacement of the trees required to be preserved within the buffers with required number of Class A and Class B trees. So as I stated, this is an after-the-fact request to allow for the replanting of the required number of trees within the front, side, and rear buffers to replace the 19 existing trees that were, inadvertently removed during the demolition of the previously existing building. While the removed Class A and Class B trees were in good condition and should have been preserved as required, staff does not have any objection to the proposed landscape plan as attached, since it will allow to bring the site into compliance.
All right, and who do I have here representing this case? Would you please step up and state your name and your address, please?
My name's Robert Piper. I'm at 10202 Jefferson Highway, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
All right, sir.
So I don't have too much to add to staff comments other than a few supplemental points. I'm the developer on the project, so I think to date we've had our civil engineer be kind of the point of contact. But I thought it was important for to be here today. So we are caught between a demolition contractor and a site work contractor, neither of which currently has accepted liability for taking down trees that we tagged, but we're working on that. In the interim, we've revised our landscape plan to replace all of the trees to bring us back into the compliance with the appropriate class, caliper, spacing, as well as just put the trees back where they were, as opposed to trying to jam them all on the side or the corner. I think always important to, there were for example, there were crepe myrtles in front, so we're replacing those back with crepe myrtles in the front. So I think we're trying to do our best of an unfortunate situation, but I'm here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
All right, sir. Is there anyone here that opposes this case? All right. Sir, is there anything else you'd like to add? I believe this is your landscape plan and...
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Everybody get a copy of that? Okay. All right. I'll open it up to the board for questions. No questions? All right. Do I have perhaps a motion? Mr. Blosh.
Okay, Madam Chairman, the case 2022-2829, I'd like to move that we accept the request for replacement of the trees and also the plan that's been submitted.
All right, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Daly seconds. All right, let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your time. All right. Last but not least. Right, we are now going to look at BOA case 2022-2831, request by applicant in an A3 suburban zoning district to reduce the required rear yard setback from 30 to 6 feet to add a staircase and a balcony to an existing single-family residence. Property is located at 115 Holly Street, Mandeville. And Mr. Burning, or are you representing, sir?
I am, yes, ma'am.
Would you please let the staff read their comments, and then we'll ask you to say your name.
A building permit was issued in February 2022 to allow for the existing residence to be remodeled and elevated to meet the base flood elevation requirements. The residence was vertically elevated and remained in its current location, approximately 10 feet from the rear property line. Prior to the elevation, the residence was accessed from some staircases of approximately 3 to 5 steps. Longer and higher staircases have been installed on the front and the side to access the residence. The objective of the request is to allow for the addition of a third staircase, which would extend 4 foot inside the setback and allow access to the residence from the rear balcony. The third staircase would replace a previously existing precast concrete 4 steps attached to the residence before it was elevated.
All right.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeff Shane. I'm with the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I have the pleasure of representing the property owner and also the petitioner, Mr. Trey Burning, who's with me this evening sitting on the front row. I would like to tell you our story and explain our request in greater detail. I think the staff report has captured the essence of the request, and that is that in lieu of a previous four-step staircase that protruded into a 10-foot open or setback area on the east side of this structure, we now propose to have a 4-foot wide aerial balcony and staircase that will wrap around the structure such that there will be no grounding of the proposed staircase into that 10-foot area. You might say, Jeff, how so? Give me some more details. I need to understand this. The first thing I'd like you to do is to take a look at the third page of your staff report, which I assume is the resub survey. And assuming all of you have that handy, I want to make sure that you can focus on the structure in question. So my client, Mr. Burning, is a widower. He and his 4 children live on lot 32D1. This is in Lewisburg, and his house, of course, fronts on the lake. That's the southernmost lot that you can see. The parcel in question is noted to be a residence. It's actually his guest home. It is on lot 32-D1B, and we're actually going to be focusing on the northerly and easterly side of that structure. And there's a 10-foot opening, as you can see. My poor eyes, it might be 10 feet 2 inches, or maybe that's 10 feet, but that is the area in question that we're going to be discussing. We're also going to be talking about the property owner that will have a structure nearest this requested variance, and that's a gentleman who owns lot 32D1A. That's the northernmost of the 3 lots, and he is soon to begin construction on a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot home that will, of course, abut this property. So this is sort of how the story goes. Picture this structure, approximately 100 years old, 1,700 square feet, being built at grade, at ground level. And picture Hurricane Ida in September of 2021, bringing 7+ feet of water on this surface and obviously running through that structure. As a result of Hurricane Ida, my client not only elevated his home, his master home, the home that he lives in that fronts the lake, but he also, of course, wanted to preserve and protect certainly not just property values, but for life safety reasons, he wanted to elevate what I'll refer to as the guest home, the structure in question. So he goes through a process wherein he comes to the parish, requests the appropriate permitting to raise the home, and FEMA suggests that the BFE should be a minimum of 11 feet. Happy to say he got the permit. He raised the home 11 feet. The job has recently been finished. There may be a few odds and ends, but for the most part, it's a completed job. Along the way, a problem occurs in that at the time the parish permitted the raising of the home, my client nor the parish focused on the fact that there was an access or exit, if you will, from the structure on the east side into that 10-foot area. What kind of exit? Picture a beautiful door, not just an everyday door, but more importantly, that had a 4-step concrete step that led into that 10-foot area. Of course, that concrete step apparatus was grounded. My client, of course, had no reason to keep the 4-step structure in place, and for good reason, obviously now has that exit door 11 to 13 feet in the air. So that portion of the home, the northeasterly portion of the home, is actually a bedroom. And of course the concern, and again I mentioned 4 children who love to play in the guest house and get out of the main house and try to get away from dad. If we were to have a fire in that northeasterly corner of the home, and if that fire were in the center section of the home, the connector, if you will, that connects the northeasterly to the southwesterly, you can imagine the problem of getting out without jumping 12 feet. So my client devised or came up with the idea with his architect, let's build a balcony. We'll only bring it out so many feet, and we will build a staircase, but it will be suspended in air, and it will wrap around the structure, and it will abut the ground, but abut the ground in somewhat of the middle of the structure, if you will, underneath it, that it won't go in the 10-foot area. So the first, I guess, points I make is that raising the home was for the obvious reasons, to protect the property, but also to protect people in the event of obviously high water. The second issue or problem that is being addressed and hopefully solved is how do you get out of that house in the event that you have the roof blow off, you have a tree hit it, you have a fire, a variety of situations. Now, so in support of the variance request, which is really just an aerial variance, meaning it's airspace only, and it only protrudes 4 feet into that 10-foot area, albeit all aerial, we did some homework. One of the things I did was, and if you'll take a look at the packet that I've given you, you'll see some photographs in the first section. There's 4 photographs in question. Hopefully you have paged through those 4 photographs, and hopefully it makes a little sense based on the things that I've told you. Yes, that's the doorway you see suspended in the air on the first picture. Notice that there is an existing air conditioner that is ground supported on the other portion of the structure. That was there, previously there, into the airspace. No conditions have changed there. But if you would look at the other attachments in the packet, I've tried to mark them for you to make it a little bit easier. You should see a number 2 in the upper left-hand corner. That is an email letter written last evening by Mr. Adrian Maselli, who's the neighbor building the home to the north. And his letter, in essence, says, my neighbor has explained to me what he's going to do. The southeast corner of my house is only going to be 50 feet from this area in question. I don't have any problem with what he's trying to do. If you take a look at the third item, and that's an item marked 3 in the upper left corner, I think my client did a pretty good job. I accused him of being a Magazine Street artist, of giving us a sketch, though, of what it looks like. And if you'll take a look at that sketch, I really think it gives you a much better feel as to what he envisions in terms of the balcony, where the staircase would run, the full-foot aerial variance, and of course, nothing grounded. Item 4 is very important in that at one point in consulting with staff, there was some belief that no variance might be needed until more further review was made of the regs. I do want you to know, though, that our code envisions the possibility of structures actually protruding into the variance area as a matter of airspace. And they specify roof, gutter, eave, fixed awning, marquee, or canopy. And notice that they can go out as far as 5 feet. Yes, what we're doing is not any of those. But my point is the code envisions the possibility of a structure extending into the airspace. This is a little different, granted, but I'm not so sure that the same concepts aren't being employed. Item 5 is a letter from a local architect, Mr. Kieran Weldon. Some of you may be familiar with his firm, Weldon Barre. And I have yellowed for you what I believe to be the critical areas after his review of the NFPA as it relates to the life safety issue, makes it very clear that that door is essential, it's critical, and for safety reasons, that door needs to be there and have an access to the ground. So at the end of the day, what I believe we have presented to you this afternoon is a request for an aerial variance of 4 feet to allow a needed door, a needed balcony, a needed staircase that in fact will replace or supplant what previously was there, except previously you had a 4-step stair apparatus that was grounded. We believe that our request is reasonable. We hope that you will take all of these thoughts into consideration. I know there are others in the room that may feel otherwise, but I'll be happy to address their comments after they make their remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have someone who is in opposition to this that would like to speak? Thank you. Would you please state your name and
Yes,
your
ma'am. Good afternoon. I'm
address?
Salem David. I'm the son of the property owner, my father, Salem David. I live at 116 North Lake, just down the street. Currently not in the house, thanks to Hurricane Ida, as we've already talked about. But I'm actually living in my dad's house, which has been convenient. So I'm here to represent him today, so thank you. He had sent in a letter. I don't know if everybody had received a copy of it, expressing his concerns. And to begin with, raising this house initially, it's already 10 feet from the property, and that's, portions of the house are closer. When you talk about the eaves and other things that are allowed to protrude 5 feet further, they are absolutely closer than 10 feet already. But the house is already there, grandfathered in, copy. It was raised quickly without any consideration or really correspondence back and forth with my father. And if we had done that, raised it, possibly moved it further from the property line, we wouldn't even be here today. But in my mind, the variance is completely unnecessary. There's no hardship that really comes along with that portion of the house. He alluded to possibly a fire, having to get out of the bedroom. The bedroom has multiple windows, all egressable. From the bedroom door that faces towards the south portion, the front of the house, if you will, there is another door, the second of the three, just a few feet away from the bedroom door right there. And one other thing I would like to note, they refer to it as the rear of the property. It is the rear of their property. It's the side of my father's, if that happens to be applicable. Already has two required exits, one on each portion of the house. Has required bedroom windows for egress as per the code. If he really wants another exit coming directly off of that bedroom, there are other options that don't infringe and encroach further upon the 10-foot setback, thereby negatively affecting my father's property. Multiple options be willing to discuss, but we've gone nowhere with that, unfortunately. It is a historical home, my father's property. That is, it was built in 1840, so you look at negatively affecting not only the property but the value of it and whatnot. It's certainly an infringement. He could come off the back, or I'd say the back. If you're looking at the front of the house, it's the north side. So the left side of the house, where his neighbor who said he doesn't have a problem with him building this because it's not being built towards his property, could come off that side. He could come off the southern portion of the back bedroom and then go under the house instead of coming into the 10-foot encroachment. Yes, that would require him to move the door, but like I said, it's already 10 feet away. Now 11 to 13 feet, so a dozen feet in the air. So how high can we really go without that negatively affecting the property, in addition to the 4 feet that are required? And then the reference was to the aerial structure. I mean, if we're worried, if we're only considering aerial structures and the fact that there's no post going into the ground below it, how far really can you go? Where do you draw the line? Is a 4-foot aerial structure only 3 feet when you line it up and try to figure out how that applies there? So regardless, it's encroaching 4 feet into the 10-foot setback. All right. Apologies. I would have written this down on paper, what I wanted to save the lumber guy a little bit of work. Yep, so it could come off the north portion of the property, the southern portion, I'm sorry, north portion of the house, southern portion of the house, and could run under and not necessarily negatively affect my father's property. The egressable windows, and then additionally on the north portion that's facing his neighbor that is intending to build the 5,000 to 6,000 square foot home soon, he's already got a landing there. Whether it's strong enough for humans to walk on and then build stairs to, or a ladder, I'm not sure. But there is already one there that we could certainly look to beef up, and it wouldn't negatively affect my father's property at that point. Essentially, to wrap it up and not take my entire 10 minutes, the setback has already been reduced from 25 down to 10. Now we're looking to raise it up 12-ish feet in the air, which it's already done. The slab is already poured, rushed it, and then additionally now another 4 feet into it. This is a historical home, so let's not take this infringement that continues to grow and make it worse. And then just a few points that I wrote down that I wanted to touch on from his representative's speech was it's 10-ish feet to the line, but there are portions of the house, the eaves that he alluded to, which are inside of 10 feet. He elevated it after Ida, yep. The job altogether again, there was no consideration given to my dad or how this was going to affect him. Didn't even open up the conversation, just threw it up 12 feet up real quick when it's already well within inside the normal variance. The existing AC that he alluded to, yeah, that structure was already there. It just went up with it and extended the poles. So, yeah, that's neither here nor there. That was already there, though. And not only is it coming 4 feet further into the 10-foot variance that currently exists, it's now going to be beefed up. So where it used to be just like one very low profile, very close to the ground set of stairs, now it's 12 feet in the air. And instead of being a set of stairs, it's got to go from the door all the way to the southeast corner of that portion of the bedroom, then turn. So it just gets beefed up. It's an eyesore. Yep, the north lot, again, he said he wasn't upset with it. It doesn't face his property, it doesn't go towards his property. That's not to be surprised. And then the 5 foot of the eaves or canopy or whatever that he alluded to, agreed, but this is not any of those, as he conveniently alluded to as well. The door is not essential, but if he really wants one again, there are other options. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a rebuttal on this?
Thank you. Well, with all due respect, there have been discussions, trading of text at least, and maybe some verbal discussions with this gentleman's father. I'm not sure about with him, but and the thing that I keep hearing is that there was no consultation with his father, and there was no reach out to him before these steps were taken. So although there were some conversations, maybe they weren't in advance, but at the end of the day, I think it's difficult for someone that owns a property that experiences 7+ feet of water, ruination, attempts, and I might add, without the benefit of a FEMA grant, this is all out of his back left pocket, decides he's going to raise his home and raise his guest home. He doesn't do so of his own volition. He makes an investigation. He finds out what permit or permits he may need to do so. He lawfully does that. The intrusion into the airspace, and if you will, take a look at the second photograph in that set of 4. It should have been the very top packet I gave you. I mean, you can see the landing that is on what I'll call the southerly portion of this structure. It's got the air conditioning, but what I really want you to focus on is the foliage and the greenery. It's very difficult. This Salem home, in my estimation, is a good 150 feet or so from this corner in question. I don't believe that this is going to present an aesthetic or issue of any sort. And I actually think that my client should probably be commended in the sense of trying to do it the right way. I do think it's significant that our code envisions that a property owner can have structures that in fact intrude into airspace. And I understand that that listing may not be illustrative, it may be specific, but I think it gives us a foundation. If there had never been a door on the northeast side and there'd never been steps in that 10 feet, we'd have a totally different proposition. But you know what? There's been a door for 100 years. I don't know if the steps were there 100 years. I doubt the steps that I saw were there 100 years. I'm sure they were rotted out at some point and replaced with concrete, probably concrete to withstand the water that area saw over the surface from time to time, every 2, 3, 5 years, whenever we have a special event. So we now have an opportunity to make sure that the structure and property has a better chance of surviving any form of calamity. But more importantly, we have to make sure that anyone sleeping in that bedroom has an easy opportunity to get out. The fact that there are windows, what are you going to do, jump out the window? Jump off the landing on the north side of the house? That's not what this is all about. I think it's really very practical to continue to use the door where it is, not relocate the door. And I think it's somewhat ingenious that my client has devised what he believes to be a fairly innocuous balcony. It's not a sitting balcony. It's not one that's going to have a chaise lounge. It's not one that people are going to sit out in the evening and have a drink or read a book. It's simply going to be used in the event you need to get to that staircase to get out, because that structure is somewhat odd-shaped in terms of its configuration, and there could be a fire in a couple of locations where it would not be possible to get to the other two staircases that are in the structure. Think about the letter provided to you by the architect and the site to the National Fire Code. I think that's very important. Also think about the fact that the structure and the stairs that were grounded in that 10-foot area clearly were grandfathered. Think about the fact that my client got a permit to do the work that he in fact has done, and now comes to you with an opportunity to minimize any further disturbance. If he were trying to run the staircase into that 10 feet, I think it's a totally different proposition, because then I think he might be not only intruding in that area, but also perhaps creating some form of aesthetic or nuisance to his neighbor. He doesn't want to do that. That's the last thing in the world he wants to do. So at the end of the day, I believe you have seen a hardship, but you've also seen some solutions, and you've seen some reasons to support those solutions. We respectfully ask that you grant the variance requested.
Thank you. Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So he alluded to doing it the right way, and again, I'd like to reiterate, the right way, I think, would have been to talk to my dad before raising it 12 feet in the air, possibly looking at moving it further from the property line, thereby building on that 10 feet instead of just going up 12 feet. The house, I don't know how long it's been there, 100 years. The door may or may not have been. I don't see it in the original plans, the original city or parish plans, if you will. But again, that only helps the case if it wasn't there originally. If it was, then my previous statements still stand. As far as the egress, he alluded to, what do you want us to do, jump out of the window? In my home, I have 4 bedrooms upstairs, all with windows and none with emergency egress stairs tied to them. So it's been done before. The other staircase, again, single-digit feet from the door. From the bedroom door, you open it up just a few feet away. So it's absolutely an option. And then again, want to reiterate, and I'm sure you would agree, there's no hardship here. There's nothing that would require this extra variance to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I will entertain comments from the board. Ms. Walsh?
Chairman, and this is for the applicant. I'm looking at the sketch that you provided for us, and as I see it and understand it with my eye, it seems as though as you head, I'm going to say north, and then back west beyond the door, it seems to me there's a sitting area potentially. There's a room for all sorts of things to happen there. Have you considered stopping it just where the property, or I guess just past the door where the wood protrudes out? I wish I could just show you, if you know what I'm talking about. You understand where that first pier is, or
I
head
do.
north?
It's really not
rather than wrapping around as a deck.
Sure.
Sort of.
It's not really large enough to be a sitting area. I mean, it's 4 feet wide. I'm not saying that's impossible to put a chair there,
Yeah.
but it's not set up as an area of leisure.
Right.
It's set up really to have access to the bathroom area, and the bathroom is on the north wall. If you want to look at the photograph, the first photograph of the 4 that I gave you, you'll see the water tank.
Yes.
That's the purpose for having to be able to access that water tank. Everything had to be raised there.
Right. My own personal view of this, I don't see any issue with it, considering there's a structure that already supports the AC system. I would like to see some sort of screening, like a natural screening.
Sure.
If that wouldn't be a problem. That's my own opinion of this. I don't know what the other folks are thinking.
Let me say in that regard, I mean, if it's of interest to the board, we would be happy to continue the bamboo planting that you might be able to see that's in front along that line.
Mm-hmm.
We can continue that just beyond the northeast corner of the structure, and we'll come in with some mature bamboo that will hopefully grow. Most of it prospers pretty well with some water in this part of the world. So we would be glad to do that as well.
Right, and like I said, my own opinion of this, I don't know what the other board members are thinking, but I don't like the idea of the wraparound on it. I like the functionality of just the stairs getting to it for access, for utility, not for anything else. That's my opinion.
All right, Mr. Daly?
Was there consideration to moving the door to the north side of the unit so that sort of shared that decking area?
I can't say that there was real consideration, but the primary reason is the location of the bathroom and the plumbing. Mm-hmm. It would have been cost prohibitive to door that section of the house.
Well, where those two windows are, where the large windows are, that's not the bathroom, is it?
No.
Come on up. The back door, the window to the right of the back door is bathroom in that corner.
Right, where the water tank is, but then next to the water tank on the north side, there are big windows there. That's the bedroom again, right?
That is the bedroom.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, certainly it wouldn't have been impossible, but
Right.
Not practical. And I mean, again, the thinking being that there's always been an easterly access point or exit point for the structure with steps. And so it just didn't seem that it was reasonable to think about relocating that doorway.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Swindell?
Well, I mean, I'll accept the fact that it was an oversight, that when the house was elevated, that there was no expectation put on how to make this happen. Mr. Daly asked about the northerly facing side, but why not consider moving it to the inside wall? You know, or I mean, it just seems like there's options that haven't been presented, and for you to make a point that the door in its current condition is the same as it was when it was ground level, I don't know. You know, if I was living next door, I suppose he may be concerned that at some point somebody's going to put a chair out there and turn it into an elevated porch and look out over his property, and that would not have been a concern, you know, when the house was on a ground level. So, I mean, are there other options that had been considered outside of the north?
I suggested that we would plant screening to make sure that it would likewise not be in view as the air conditioner and those other structures are on that part of the building. Again, I mean, I think the real honest answer here is that my client could not have conceived that anyone was going to object. There's one structure that's close. That's the one to be built 40 feet away. And I guess to the extent that if you do start some surgery and start moving the door to the north side, it becomes in plain view of the house that's going to be built to the north and other properties to the north. I'm not suggesting that's bad that they'd see it. I'm only saying that that's a consequence. I think that if you look at the neighboring property to the east, yes, the house fronts to the north, but as a practical matter, one would assume that most people are going to spend their time on the south side of the house near the lake. And that's why my client really didn't think this was that big a deal. And I don't say that with lack of respect to this gentleman or his family. Please don't take it in that fashion. But if we had thought that we were doing something sinister, I think that would be different. No one has suggested it was sinister. If we thought we were doing something that was in poor keeping, I really believe at the end of the day that everyone's going to forget that this door is there, and I think it will be nice to know that it's there as a functional matter, but also I think that your hardship here is that there are some life safety issues raised, and this is a very reasonable solution to it. So we would ask that you consider it.
Thank you. Mr. Swindle, anything else?
No.
All right. Mr. Spees?
I don't have any problem with it. I think that the little difference on the upstairs part is not going to affect anything, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Are there any more comments from the board before I entertain a motion? All right. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Spees?
Okay. I make a motion that we approve case number 2022-2831.
All right, it has been moved that we approve BOA case 2022-2831. Do I have a second? No second?
You can second to move it, so I'll second it, and then you can make a friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to make an amendment to that, that they add some screening, whether that's bamboo or something, to make an attempt to at least hide that from view.
All right.
Can we make it clear?
Yeah.
I think that Mr. Shane suggested bamboo, and maybe we can determine the length of, where would it start and stop? Would it be just the length of the house, or?
We will continue to plant from the existing stand all the way to the northeast corner of our lot, which goes well beyond the house, so that hopefully it creates the same green screen that you see now along the southerly portion of that line. So the condition would be that we plant significant bamboo all the way to the northeast corner, the 10 feet inside the northeast corner of the lot.
So
But
all the way
to
up to the property?
Up
the
to our
north?
northern boundary.
Okay.
That is correct.
Mr. Spees, is that amendment acceptable to you?
Yes, that's fine.
And is that acceptable to you,
So
Mr.
it would
Daly?
actually be on our eastern boundary. I misspoke. Forgive me, I'm tired like you guys are. It would be on the eastern boundary of the lot, and it would go to the northeast corner of the lot. That preserves the 10-foot area to continue to be open, but to have a green screen that would continue.
All right. All right, then why don't we go ahead and vote?
Motion carries.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, there's one, thank you for letting me do this today. It was a really long day, but I appreciate your patience. Last month, something came up at the end of our meeting that I talked to Tom about, and that was a discussion on Robert's Rules of Orders on whether or not a chair could make a motion and/or second. I did look that up in Robert's Rules, dependent upon the size of the group, of the organization. When I was parliamentarian for a very large organization, about 1,800 people, it was, Robert's Rules is very clear that you do not for that. But a group our size, you can in fact make a motion, and you can in fact second a motion. It's just requested that you don't do it frequently, because then it gives an appearance of partiality, so.
I would like to point out, too, I researched that issue well when Mr. Ballantyne brought it up to me, and there is AG opinions for public bodies on that issue. Says we have to not only comply with Robert's Rules, we also have to comply with open meetings law, which not all boards and commissions are subject to. And the AG has opined that chairs should not make motions, but if they want to make a motion, they can temporarily cede their chair position to another member of the board in order to make a motion on a case.
Right.
They may never get it back. Isn't there like a moving of the question for a vote, like a straight up and down vote? Can't the chair do that?
The chair can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
a straight up and down can be. Right. But
Yeah.
when you're dealing with motions and that, I think you just have to be sort of careful about the way it looks. And obviously, you know, when you take that course that we took on commissions, goes into that some too, so.
There's only been a few cases where no one was willing to bring up a motion. And I suppose that'd be the only time a chair would be, if they felt so
Right.
inclined that
I would think.
there should be a motion.
All right. Any new business for this august body?
Any update as towards our resolution that we?
It is on the council agenda for Thursday for introduction, and it'll be up for adoption if it's introduced in June.
Okay, and I would possibly encourage you all to make a call to some of these folks, especially,
Yeah.
let them know how you feel about it, what's going on here. But I
Yeah.
think that, we're making the right steps by denying a lot of these cases we know we shouldn't, even though it doesn't feel good to do it.
Yeah, you still.
I think that's where it starts, and the fine, or not the fine, but the increased fees will be an aid as well. But like I said, we have to do what's right, and like I said, not always does it feel right, but it'll feel good. But anyway, that's what we're here for, right?
You're right, you're right.
Concur.
If I could just make one more comment too. I know that when we're in this room together, we can all hear each other clearly, but the meeting's being recorded and it's actually being broadcast. And if we're not speaking on our microphones, it doesn't pick up on the recording and not on the broadcast version. So it's very important that we all speak into our microphones and that we make sure that anyone that we're asking questions of in the audience also comes to the podium, speak on the microphone. I know we had a number of controversial cases today that probably will be appealed to the 22nd JDC. And this recording of this meeting becomes the most important record that the judge is going to consider when he's reviewing that case on appeal. And he has to be able to hear everything that we have said in the meeting. So even though we can hear each other in here during the meeting, it's very important that everyone use their microphone feature, put yourself in the queue so that I know who to, because I'm the only one that can do this, but I'm trying to listen to questions too. So please put yourself in the queue, please use your microphones, and please make sure that anyone you're asking questions to, the audience, comes to the podium to respond.
Thank you.
I understand.
All right. With that being said.
That was for me.
I believe.
I'm terrible at it.
All right, I hereby, wait, let me get this gavel.
Madam Chair.
We are adjourned. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we terminate this meeting.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I don't know, that was one of the longest one we've ever had, isn't it?